Chapter 99, I'm looking for your growth. Who gave that book to Yili? Yunshi was going crazy. Wasn't that a banned book? Its name made Yunshi have a bad impression. It must be a pornographic book that could never be purchased from proper channels. Yili. Don't learn anything from that book. As an exceptional lady, you should know what books you can read and what books you should never touch. Papa, don't you love me now? Yili found that Yunshi looked angry. She gazed at him with a timid look, as if she were a little animal whose master was scolding it. No. This was not your fault, Yunshi said and stroked Yili's golden hair. This was the fault of the person who let you read this book. Yili was still that little girl in his memory. Her face was still cute, her voice was still sweet, and her body was still soft. Yili's appearance was incredibly cute now. She opened her eyes wide, full of unrest, and shivered in Yunshi's arms. Yunshi felt that she was as perfect as an angel. Her warm, soft, slender Bowie was now in his arms. Her long golden hair was hanging down in front of his chest. He could easily smell her milky scent. She was as cute as a flawless doll who was wearing a pair of white silk stockings and a lace dress. I like Papa the best. In return, Yili also hugged Yunshi tightly. She hummed a song with a happy smile on her face. They were so close. Yunshi could even hear her heart beating. Her heart was beating fast. As long as Yili can stay with Papa, Yili won't feel bored. I hope this moment will last forever. Yili felt that the world was so wonderful right now. She was immersed in her little happiness. To her, she hoped that the time would stop at this moment. She wanted nothing more in the world other than to stay together with her Papa. To Yili, Yunshi was her only one, the light of her life, and the fire of her soul. He was her shining sun. She hoped nothing would tear her apart from Yunshi. She wanted to have his every second and every breath. Everyone had seen her love to her Papa. It wasn't a family love, but some deeper and finer emotion. Its name was love. Papa, can you make me a promise? She knew this feeling, and she was eager for Yunshi, her most valuable treasure in the world. Yili didn't want to be a loser. What? Yunshi felt guilty to Yili. He had already surrendered in his heart. He would do everything he could do for her. This was the only thing he could do to offset his guilt. Promise Yili that you will be my Papa forever. No matter where you go or what you do, never forget Yili. Yunshi sighed. Was this her hope? Elphyllis, Miley, and Yili were all good girls. If he hadn't awakened his memory as Starchild, after Hua Hua left the town, no matter which girl he would marry, he thought that they would achieve happiness at the end. However, he couldn't turn back the clock since he was just a human. He had to go on with his life. I promise that I will never forget Yili. Therefore, accept my seed, Yili. Detect the target. Extremely perfect adaptability. Start the link. This was the first time Yunshi saw the evaluation, extremely perfect. It wasn't normal, excellent, or wonderful. It was extremely perfect. This meant that Yili had the best adaptability with his seed. Perhaps it also meant that she had the highest favorability to him. Yunshi could even see it through his naked eyes that his seed was growing rapidly in her body. However, there was also something strange in Yili's body, just like what he had seen in Elphyllis's body and Miley's body. It was a chaotic field. Various strange things were mixed with each other in the field. A big eyeball which was floating in the void. A giant teddy bear which was burning. A stone figure which had many arms and legs. It seemed to be pieced together by countless fragments. And an egg which was locked in countless black chains. Compared to Elphyllis and Miley, Yili's body was filled with countless messy things. It looked like an aggregation of countless nightmares. Why were there so many weird things in Yili's body? Shouldn't she be the purest child? Papa, don't look inside me. Yili seemed to have discovered Yunshi's gaze. She blushed, then covered Yunshi's mouth with her mouth again. Her kiss contained all her enthusiasm. Her tongue easily opened Yunshi's mouth, tangling with his tongue. Goozy. Goozy. An ambiguous sound echoed around them. Yili had put all her love in the kiss. A drop of transparent liquid slowly flowed down from their mouths and dripped on her snow-white skin. How long had it been? 10 minutes. Or longer. After Yunshi recovered himself, Yili had left his arms, showing a smile with a satisfied look at him. Yili won't give up. Hua Hua is strong, but Yili isn't inferior to her. However, I'm still no match for her now, but I can grow up very fast. At that time, I will beat her down and obtain Papa's love again. Well, the children nowadays were really precocious. However, you wanted to beat Hua Hua down. That was impossible. I need nothing apart from Papa. So, wait for me, Papa. Yili swayed her slender legs and jumped down from Yunshi's arms, then waved her hand to Yunshi. Ah, I will wait for you. I'm looking forwards to your growth. Yunshi's heart also got warm due to Yili's self-confidence. She was just a child, but she was so straightforward. Maybe it was because she was still a child, so she could say her heartfelt wishes without worry. Children really worried about nothing. They were a kind of very special creatures. Maybe she really could do that. Yunshi suddenly had this strange idea in his heart as Yili held her little teddy bear in her arms, bouncing up and down on her way back. Chapter 100, Emptiness God, Humph. Yili likes Papa the best, but I can't stay with Papa. It must be Hua Hua's fault. I can't eat Papa's butter bread again. Woo woo woo. After leaving Yunshi's sight, Yili also complained just like Elphyllis and Miley had done. At first, Yili and the other girls came to this remote sword domain to observe Hua Hua. They disguised themselves and appeared around Hua Hua with different identities and faces. Everything was due to that legend about Sky-Flying Bloodline. As the current owner of Sky-Flying Bloodline, Hua Hua was gifted with great talents and was the most likely person to fulfill the prophecy. As the representative of the Ten Leaves Alliance, Elphyllis pretended to be a daughter of a gem store owner, watching Hua Hua from a distance. As the representative of the Gold family, Meiliai's dream avatar became the daughter of a flower shop owner, quietly watching Hua Hua. Finally, Yili came. She came to this remote sword domain by using the most special method. At first, Hua Hua was the only center of their world. She was the only reason for them to stay in this remote small town. However, when had it changed? Elphyllis, Meiliai, and her had all been attracted by the young boy who was always together with Hua Hua. He knew nothing and noticed nothing, but always had a warm smile on his face. Elphyllis gave up her principle of never breaking into Hua Hua's life. She couldn't stop herself from getting close to that boy. Meiliai was just dreaming. However, she also lost herself and made the quiet dream become a sweet dream. Why? My race has no soul. Why is my heart so painful? I don't even have blood in my body. Yili looked at her body, the container which contained her nature, showing a puzzled look on her face. Yili wasn't a human. She wasn't even a living being. She was a monster named Emptiness God. Everything she had was fake. Her body was fake, her smile was fake, and her soul was fake. This container named Yili was just a doll for her to move in whilst in town. Because it was just a doll, so she only put the most basic observation system in it. Although it would grow up as time went by, however, that was just in regards to removing and adding some fillers in the body to cheat ordinary people's eyes. It shouldn't become so delicate and cute. Emptiness God wasn't a race that had art and imagination. Even though they were one of the most terrible killers in the universe, they were naturally disabled in regards to creativity. This was an incurable flaw. It referred to the nature of Emptiness God race. Long, long ago, Emptiness God race was created as a kind of weapon. The only goal of their existence was to kill and destroy. Even though the ancient times had ended and the Emptiness God race had obtained freedom now, they still couldn't correct this flaw. Her true body wasn't beautiful at all. Anyone would be scared if they saw her true body. After she was reborn in this remote sword domain, she tried her best to design the new body, but only made it not too ugly and scary. However, when had everything changed? Was it after she got close to Yunshi feeling his warmth and was hugged by him? Was it after Yunshi let her wear the cute western dress, the white socks and the red shoes? Was it after Yunshi hugged her and gave her his blessing, teaching her to clean herself? She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. However, when she stayed together with him and began to call him Papa, something in her heart had forever changed. Her core, which had become very horrible and fragmented after countless killings and battles, was cured. She became Yili. She obtained a cute appearance that she had never imagined and no Emptiness God had ever had. Her slim legs, soft arms, snow-white skin, and 2 golden pigtails, were all presented by him. He made her what she was. Therefore, she called him Papa. It wasn't just because of the game, playing house, but her true belief. To Yili, Yunshi was her true father. He gave her new life, and a beautiful appearance which the whole Emptiness God race had never had. He was her god who helped her become one of the most beautiful girls in the world. This was a great feat that even the creator of Emptiness God race couldn't do. At first, she didn't have a soul and was just like a monitor for watching Hua Hua. Now, she had her soul and was ignited the light of her life. Papa, Yili loves you. I think this is the reason why my heart is so painful. Emptiness God race was only created to be a kind of killing machine. They were the terror of the void in the legend of Western God's domain. She was just a doll. Even though she gained self-awareness as time went by, but she still didn't understand the meaning of her existence. However, Yili knew it now. At first, she had nothing and was just assembled by using some unknown fragments. But now, she had Yunshi. To Yunshi, she was just one of her childhood sweethearts, but to Yili, Yunshi was her everything. He was her miracle and treasure. She would never forget his warmth when he hugged her and gave her his kiss. That must be an enlightenment of her fate. Yili was her papa's most perfect doll, the hope of Emptiness God race. She knew it now. She shouldn't let her race's future rely on Hua Hua, but should grasp it in her own hands. In the name of the 13th Emptiness God, I summon the 12 dragoons. Yili raised her head, looking at the starry sky while holding the teddy bear in her arms, which was made by Yunshi and presented to her personally. 12 shooting stars flew to her from the ends of the sky. They were Yili's personal mounts, covered in meteorite shells. Before the scorching meteorites hit the ground, they shattered. 12 bluish-white figures landed on the ground and immediately half knelt down, circling around Yili. They had ferocious metallic triangular heads, sharp long tails, and towering delta wings. They belonged to the servitor race of Emptiness God race and were Yili's war machines. They were not metal products, but also not living beings. They were the mixture of various chaos-type things, the representatives of killing and destruction, and the dominators of the borderlands in Western God's domain. Thank you, Papa. Thanks everyone in the world. I, Yili, will come back. Yili rode on the cold back of one of the dragoons, looking back at the small town, where she had spent her 9 years of life. For the future of emptiness god race and in order to defeat Huahua, she was going to leave. She would return to her birthplace to get back her true body. Let's fly, dragoons. Chapter 101, The Dark Elf on the hill outside of the small town, Yunshi saw 12 shooting stars shooting into the sky. I hope that everything will go smoothly, Yunshi prayed to the stars with his fingers crossing together. After that, he felt his seed situations through the threads, then took a deep breath with relief. It seemed that the seeds wouldn't lose efficacy as long as they were still under the starlight. Although it was hard to feel the seeds that were too far away, but the invisible threads were still unbroken. He hoped that after obtaining his seeds, Phyllis, Miley, and Yili would be successful in their lives. It was a really painful thing to say goodbye to them. Phyllis, Miley, and Yili, I hope that someday, we can meet each other again. With this wish in his mind, Yunshi turned back and began to head back to the small town. However, when he walked to the foot of the hill, an impulsion suddenly raised in his heart. He suddenly remembered the secret base that he had built together with Huahua. There were too many of his sweet memories. He had spent too much time with Huahua, Phyllis, Miley, and Yili in there. His childhood sweethearts and him often played games in that place. In the spring, they often picked wild flowers in there. In the summer, they were often barefoot, playing beside the stream. In the autumn, they often baked sweet potatoes in there. Except for the winter, they didn't go there because the weather was too cold, they had left too many shared memories in there. After he left the small town, it was very likely that nobody would go to that place again. He was afraid that the tree which was engraved with the pattern Yunshi, Huahua would be gradually forgotten in his heart with the passage of time. If so, I'd better to go there to take a last glance, Yunshi whispered. He didn't know that he had made a stupid decision, which he would regret for a long time in the future. After all, he couldn't predict the future and couldn't see what the situation in the valley was now. Under the moon, Yunshi leisurely walked to the valley, his and his childhood sweetheart's secret base. That place contained too many of his memories. His memory was becoming more and more clearer as he walked towards that place. In there, he had experienced the hard's limit practice in his life, and squeezed out his greatest potential. When Yunshi walked to the entrance of the valley, he saw the sword mark, which he had left the last time he was there. However, something in the air was wrong. It's the taste of blood. Did some injured animal run into this valley? Yunshi sniffed with a confused look. Well, that was rare. Yunshi didn't know the reason, but very few animals would come to this valley. At least, after him and his childhood sweethearts had built this valley as their secret base, he had never seen any wild animal coming to this place, as if there was some power protecting this valley, making it a fantastic place of peace. However, it looked like this place had been invaded by some unknown animal now. The scent of blood was so strong. He had a feeling that the animal must be hurt badly. Is it a deer or sheep? Yunshi wasn't good at distinguishing the smell of different animals, however, it shouldn't be some small animal like rabbit, because the scent of blood was too strong. Yunshi didn't think that it was a ferocious beast. After all, this place wasn't in the remote mountains. The 5 tiger generals had killed all the ferocious beasts near the small town. Yunshi walked into the valley. He sniffed the scent of blood in the dark and searched for the injured animal. Under the moon, the grass in the valley was covered with hazy light. This was his first time coming to the valley in the deep night, and he found that it was more vivifying than in the daytime. Maybe the unknown animal was following its instinct to come here to try find some herbs. However, Yunshi didn't think that it was still alive. Even if it was a deer or sheep, after bleeding so much, it should be unable to survive. Yunshi had prepared himself to find and bury the unknown animal as his last commemoration before he left. Then he saw her, the lonely figure who was sleeping under the tree. She had pale white hair, drawn pointy ears, and was covered with a ragged, bloody cloak. He could see her black skin and the V-shaped wound on her body. This was a living being that was very rare in Eastern God's domain. Dark elf. Yunshi was dumbfounded. It wasn't a deer nor a sheep, but a dying girl. If her chest didn't still heave slowly, Yunshi would have thought that she had died. No matter how Yunshi looked at it, the V-shaped wound was undoubtedly a fatal wound. He could even see bones through the wound. She was seriously injured and the wound was so creepy. It was already a miracle to see that she was still alive. Cough, the dark elf felt that someone was here. With a loud cough, she strenuously opened her eyes, gazing at Yunshi. Well, do you want to say something as your last words? I can help you pass on the words to your family. Yunshi felt sorry for her, but he didn't have any method to save the dark elf girl. Come, here, the dark elf girl struggled with a dangerous intent hiding in her eyes. However, Yunshi didn't notice it. After all, who would suspect a dying person? Well, I promise that I will listen very carefully. Yunshi thought that she was going to say her last words, so he got close to her with pity. You don't know, he is everywhere. The dark elf girl cast a spiritual spell, trying to capture Yunshi's body and soul. What are you saying? Can you say it clearly? Yunshi looked at the dying girl with a confused look. The dark elf girl spat out blood. She was one step closer to death itself. She wanted to live. She must survive. The dark elf girl used her last strength to draw out a half-golden flower from her inside pocket, then strenuously chewed it. What a pleasant fragrance of flowers. Yunshi smelt the scent of the elf's flower. His heart suddenly started to beat faster. He had never smelt this scent, but it was so sweet, fragrant and intoxicating. Chapter 102, Elf's Flower. If it wasn't Yunshi but Elphyllis, Miley, or Yili, they would realize that the golden flower was a very rare magical medicine from the elf's forest, golden orchid. Only elves could cultivate this flower. In the aristocratic society of Western God's domain, it was 10 times more expensive than gold, because it could cure sexual impotence by stimulating humans' desire and vitality. Even if it was a 100-year-old man, after taking a small flake of the flower, he would become a strong man again. For this reason, many people were eager to acquire it. Once it appeared in the markets, countless people would scramble for it. However, the elf race was born from the fruit of the elf's tree. They didn't need males to produce descendants. As such, the golden flower was just a kind of rare winemaking material to them, and they rarely sold the flowers to the outside world. At first, the dark elf carried this flower with her as an equivalent to gold. She didn't expect that she would draw support from the flower's special effect. As Yunshi moved closer to the dark elf girl to hear her last words, the dark elf girl suddenly reached out her hands, forcibly holding Yunshi's face, and gave him a kiss. The golden orchid easily entered Yunshi's mouth with the dark elf girl's tongue. Immediately, a sweet and intoxicating feeling spread out and flowed across his whole body. What? What was that? Yunshi was drunk. The golden orchid was one of the best top-class winemaking materials, but also a kind of natural, rare aphrodisiac. Yunshi felt dizzy. The dark elf girl's body gradually became vague in his eyes. Was it Hua? No. She looked like Elphyllis or Miley, too. No. She was Huayu. No. Xiao Chao. Yunshi's blood was boiling. He could see every familiar girl's features emanating from that dark elf girl. In his eyes, the dark elf girl had become his favorite girl in the world now. Cough. After feeding the chewed golden orchid to Yunshi, the dark elf girl had been totally exhausted. She couldn't even move a finger now. Yunshi was controlled by the sexual passion in his heart. He reached out his hands and forcibly grasped the elf girl's hands. In his eyes, she was the aggregation of every girl he liked. The amount of the golden orchid was enough to promote an elephant into its estrus, naturally including Yunshi. It was already incredible enough that Yunshi still hadn't totally lost his sanity yet. Ouch! The dark elf girl looked like she was in pain. However, she didn't resist Yunshi. After all, this was what she hoped for. After getting such a serious injury, she had to heal herself by using such an extreme method. Yunshi moved his hands, feeling the smooth tactility of the girl's skin. The dark elf girl slightly pushed him away, but immediately stopped resisting. Yunshi's breathing was becoming more and more heavier. The girl's various figures gradually overlapped together, finally forming a perfect figure. It wasn't a girl that actually existed. It was just an aggregation of all the fantastic imaginations about girls in Yunshi's mind. I in the trial again. The golden orchid had left Yunshi's mind in a great state of confusion. He gazed at the perfect girl with a dumbfounded look. After that, he touched the girl's chest through her clothes. Her breasts changed their shapes in his hands and made him feel wonderful with each caress. Cough, no, however, his behavior almost killed the dark elf girl. After all, the V-shaped wound on her chest wasn't just a joke. Sorry. Are you hurting? Yunshi was already unable to distinguish reality from his fantasy, but he still immediately stopped. Kiss me. The dark elf girl was too feeble now. She could only use her weak voice to guide Yunshi. Body fluid exchange. This was her purpose in feeding Yunshi the golden orchid. As a dark elf, this was her special method to heal her body. However, even the strongest occult arts still needed to follow the rule of equivalent exchange, therefore, she needed someone to help her. Just then, Yunshi had appeared in front of her. He became her only choice. Kiss, Yunshi looked at the dreamy girl with his scorching eyes. Kiss, the dark elf girl didn't have any other choice. If she couldn't gain vitality from someone else, she would die. She didn't want to die. Even it meant that she had to use some unscrupulous methods, she must refuel her magic power. After that, the dark elf girl raised her head and awkwardly put out her tongue like a dying person in the desert, waiting for Yunshi's kiss. Oh. Psho. Joe. Oh. Yunshi couldn't stop his desire to suck the dark elf girl's smooth tongue, searching for the remaining fragrance of the golden orchid by kissing her lips. Oh. Psho. Joe. Guru. Oh, the dark elf girl groaned. At the same time, her emaciated face started to return to normal. However, that wasn't enough. She needed more and more from the kiss to nourish her exhausted magic power. Soon afterwards, she blushed and lowered her head. Oh. Psho. Woo, they kissed each other, emitting an embarrassing sound from their mouths. Compared to Yunshi's kissing skill, what he had learned from Mayer, Elphilis, Milei, and Yili, the dark elf girl knew nothing about this. Naturally, she was in a disadvantageous position. The dark elf girl's pupils started to dilate bit by bit. Like the spring breeze blowing across the frozen earth, her cold expression disappeared as her face blushed with shyness. To the elf race, the golden orchid wouldn't put them in heat. However, it was one of the best top-class winemaking materials, in that case she was actually drunk now. Ha! I love you. Hua. No, Elphyllis. Miley. Yili, Yunshi started talking rubbish. In fact, he didn't know what he was saying. He only remembered to kiss and continue kissing. He had become drunk much earlier than the dark elf girl. Chapter 103, Dream or Reality? Ha, they were just kissing. However, due to the golden orchid side effect, the dark elf girl was exhausted like a prey that had been captured by the hunter. As for Yunshi, he just couldn't stop. Show. Woo. Coo. Again and again. Yunshi sucked the dark elf girl's tongue with greed. Trace, aunt, the dark elf girl absorbed a few magical power from Yunshi's kissing and slightly recovered her physical strength. She tried to launch a magical spell called Deus Ex Machina, but her action was interrupted again and again by Yunshi's hot kisses. Yunshi fully tasted the dark elf girl's tongue. Her tongue was small and cute, but also very soft and warm. Yunshi uncontrollably sucked her tongue to break her resistant consciousness. Their tongues tangled together like one. Now the dark elf girl was really at the end of her rope. She couldn't cast any spell in this position and had to let Yunshi do whatever he liked. Finally, after about 15 minutes, she found an opportunity to cast the spell. Dozens of red lines spread from her fingertips to Yunshi and temporarily controlled his body. Cough. After that, the dark elf girl couldn't help but violently cough. The spell had almost drained out all the magic power she had just absorbed from kissing. Fortunately, the spell succeeded. She poured her magic power into Yunshi's body and temporarily secured control of his body. If Yunshi wouldn't stop his kissing, she would die. That would be an undoubtedly stupid death. After the dark elf girl successfully controlled Yunshi's body, she hesitated for a while, then finally made a decision. She must survive. This was the most important thing. In order to complete the mission, she knew that she should use all kinds of methods and sacrifice everything she had. This was what she learned since her childhood. Therefore, no matter how shameful it was, she must do it because it was the only method to help her survive. Although she had never learned anything about this. As a phantom archer, she was good at assassination but not spying. This time, Yunshi's face had blushed like an apple due to the raising sexual passion in his heart. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about how to abreact it. The dark elf girl shakily raised her hand and touched Yunshi's sensitive sword, helping him to abreact his desire in a very inept method. Dawn was coming. A black figure stumbled as it came out of the valley and immediately blended into the shadows. The dark elf girl was running. She covered the corner of her mouth with her hand, which had subtle white liquid. Woo! Goo! The dark elf girl showed a bitter and disgusted look on her face as if she was taking deadly poison. However, she still swallowed all the white liquid including the residue in the corner of her mouth. Everything she did was for survival. She didn't want to remember the thing that had happened in the valley again. That was just a nightmare. At least, when the girl disappeared in the darkness, she was holding this idea in her heart. Yunshi had a dream which made him feel that he was in paradise but also that it was very real. In the dream, he met a cute girl who had all the good features in the world. She had Hua's vigor, Hua Yu's full breasts, Elphyllis's slender legs, and Yili's sweet milky aroma. He remembered her soft, tender, exquisite, and alluring body. He remembered her blushing face, attractive eyes, and slender legs. He remembered her snow-white body and all her slight moves. He remembered the feeling when he stroked her smooth and warm skin. When she moved her fingers to her legs and took off her socks, exposing her white, slender legs under the soft moonlight, Yunshi felt that his heart was pounding like a drum. Finally, when she stroked her foot, tantalizing him bit by bit, Yunshi couldn't stand that anymore. It was so alluring to rub her chest, legs and foot. Compared to the lesson the big sister taught him that year's summer, this dream was more wild. Her feet were so sensitive in his hands, and a few soft touches were already enough to make her become excited. Her white legs, slender body and groans. Wait, that was strange. Why was my memory so disordered and paradoxical? What was her appearance? Big breasts or flat breasts? Slender and tall body or small and cute body? Was she older than Hua Yu and El Phyllis, or more young than Miley and Yili? Yunshi didn't remember. He only knew that it was the most fantastic dream he had had in his life. If he considered it as a dream, the experience was too real. The orchid's fragrance still remained in his mouth. Besides, he felt that his body was so weak, as if his vigor had been drained out due to some reason. Did we break the last line? Did I kiss her hands, foot or mouth? Maybe. I had kissed her whole body. Strange. Why can't I remember it? Yunshi sat under the tree and tried remembering, but found that his memory after 4 o'clock had all vanished. He had come to the valley at the spur of a moment. However, he wasn't sure if the thing that happened next was a dream or reality. Did he fall in love at first sight with an unknown girl? In his memory, he had met a perfect girl who had all the good features in his imagination, then they had done some erotic things which he would never tell anyone. She had fed him a very palatable petal, then the world had suddenly become indescribably fantastic and charming. After he had woken up, only the orchid's fragrance on his teeth, and the empty feeling in his body, reminded him that it wasn't just a dream. He had met a girl in the valley between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock, then he had a sexual dream. Oh, maybe it was not a dream. Yunshi couldn't distinguish which part was reality and which part was simply his imagination. Blood. Yunshi suddenly saw scarlet drops of blood under his feet. His face changed. Was this her first experience? Chapter 104, Dawn and Darkness. Dawn was coming. The sun appeared over the horizon, emitting endless golden lights in the sky. It broke the darkness and shined endless light and heated the earth. After coming back from the valley, Yunshi put on the black maid's uniform again. Now, he sighed and gazed at Hua Hua, who was lying on his bed with a sozzled look. Haha, little she. Why are there two little eyes overlapping together? Hua Hua was too happy last night. She had flown in the sky for a long time, then drank in a town that was dozens of kilometers away from the small town. Now, she was sitting on her childhood sweetheart's bed and stretching herself. Hua Hua, you're drunk. Yunshi sighed and looked at Hua Hua, who was as drunk as a lord. In Yunshi's memory, Hua Hua never drank. He didn't expect that she was so bad a drinker. However, he couldn't complain about it, because he wasn't any better than her. He was also drunk from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. He was still confused about what had happened to him during that time. Who were you? Why were you willing to do that with me? A girl's first experience should be her most valuable experience. Was it good to do it with me? Sigh. I really shouldn't drink from now on, Yunshi sighed in his heart. At least, let me remember your face. After all, this wasn't only your first experience, but also my first experience. As an inexperienced young boy, the thing that happened in the valley was too shocking for him. He was too ashamed to look straight at his childhood sweetheart's face. You. I feel sick. Hua Hua exposed her most unladylike side in Yunshi's room. Yunshi was her childhood sweetheart, her favorite person, so she didn't mind him seeing her bad side. Her hair and her clothes were messy, and her body was full of the smell of alcohol. Her behavior was so casual, as if she was luring Yunshi. You, sigh. Why are you so happy? Yunshi sighed and woke her up. He didn't know that Hua Hua had heard his secret when he poured it out to the mirror. Hua Hua, wake up. Go to take a bath and put on your clothes. It's time to go to Sword Palace now. Hua Hua half opened her eyes and looked at Yunxi in bewilderment. She stretched herself, then started to put on her clothes. Her healthy, energetic body exposed in front of Yunxi's eyes without reservation. Wait, don't change your clothes here. Go to the bathroom. You can find new clothes in the second drawer. Yunxi immediately turned back. His childhood sweetheart was a monster-like genius in battle, but also a waste who couldn't even make a fried egg in daily life. After all, sky-flying sword wasn't something that was suitable for cutting up vegetables. Hua Hua was a natural cooking idiot. Well, little she, have you said goodbye to them? Hua Hua drowsily stretched herself. Her mind was still in a mess due to the headache after drinking. She had forgotten what happened after she was drunk. She computed the time and found that it should be the time that Yunxi said goodbye to Phyllis, Miley, and Yili. Now, she would take Yunxi away. You girls will never see him again. Ha ha. Did you really think that your identities were still unexposed? Did I look like an idiot who would believe that this small town could attract so many immigrants from Western God's domain? I turned a blind eye only for Yunxi's sake. Yes, and it seems that they have left this town. The neighbors will help me keep an eye on the house, and the bread shop will resume operation after my foster parents come back, so there is nothing to worry about. Yunxi looked around his room. Goodbye, Phyllis, Miley, Yili, and my ordinary life. At the same time, in the bamboo house owned by the noble family's camp, a man was drinking in the dark basement. Compared to Hua Hua, who came to her childhood sweetheart's room and slept on his bed after drinking, this person was more alone and crazy. His well-maintained hands had been scratched by the broken wine bottles on the ground. As for himself, his mind was also as broken as these bottles. A day ago, he was still that child Yunhe, who had inherited his family's twin spirit swords. Today, he had been deprived of his identity and had to face 3 years imprisonment if he chose to return to his family. He lost his family's twin swords and didn't pass through Sword Palace's entrance test. Apart from his third-ranked power and his pure family bloodline, he had lost almost everything he had. Why? Why did the twin swords choose that bitch? That mudblood came from nowhere. Why didn't they choose me? I'm the one who has the most pure Yunhe bloodline. I don't accept it. I refuse to accept it. I'm the best genius. I will make everyone regret their contempt. He was drunk, so he didn't mind roaring out his thoughts. He didn't accept it. He refused to accept it. He wanted to get everything he had lost back. He must get them back. By all means. Look at yourself, Yunhe. You're so unpresentable now, child Yun. He suddenly heard a gloomy voice from the door of the basement. Child San Quan. Why are you here? You want to mock me? The has-been child Yunhe stared at his past companion with his bloodshot eyes. No, of course not. On the contrary, I'm coming here to give you a new choice. Child San Quan smiled oddly and said, a choice which will change your life again. A choice which can let you stand on a stage which is much larger than Sword Palace's entrance test. How about it? Are you interested? Child Yun, he fiercely stand up. To him, even if it was as unreliable as a straw to a drowning person, he would also choose to try his best to catch it. Child San Quan was that straw. Say it. What's the price? Child Yun, he knew that there wouldn't be such a thing as a free lunch. If he wanted to get something, he must pay something. Smart. Only a smart man like you deserves that contract. Child San Quan didn't hide his real intention. To use trick was just his last choice. He didn't fear telling Child Yunhe that he was taking advantage of him. After all, After losing the Crane Wing's twin swords, Child Yun he wouldn't have any other choice, especially in such a remote sword domain. Your bloodline isn't something unimportant. Yun Hai Sword Master's bloodline isn't inferior to White Gold Rose bloodline. Your ancestor was far stronger than your imagination. Child San Quan said with a chant, "Believe in my God, Child Yun He. Offer your bloodline to my master and we will give you an incredible power. Don't you want power?" Chapter 105, The Evil God Comes, Power. How powerful is it? Child Yun he didn't make his choice immediately, but stared at Child San Quan with bloodshot eyes. At least it's strong enough to kill that mate as easily as blowing off dust. However, I won't lie to you. It's a power from an evil god. Child San Quan didn't hide his real intention and directly told him the truth. He. Use my bloodline, to exchange for the evil god's power. Child Yun he smiled. A day ago, he still had a bright future. He would undoubtedly not have been hooked by these words at that time. Who was he? He was Child Yun he. He was the inheritor of Crane Wing's twin swords and the first successor of Yun he family. However, the maid named Mei had destroyed his life and taken away everything he had. Why didn't Crane Wing's twin swords kill you? It was obvious that you were no match for them. I accept it. I need the power. Give it to me. After taking a few deep breathings, Child Yun he made a decision which would change his life forever. After losing everything he had, this was his only chance for revenge. Very well. You're making a very smart choice. Child San Quan showed a mysterious smile at the corners of his mouth while emitting a non-human feeling from his body. Eat this. Child San Quan drew out a blood-caked, heart-like meatball from the pocket on his chest and put it into Child Yun he's hand. Dong! After touching Child Yun he's body, the meatball emitted a heart-shaking sound. No one would doubt about the exuberant vitality contained in it. Is this the power? Child Yun he grasped the unknown meatball in his hand with greed in his eyes. Yes. Please repeat after me. Child San Quan's mouth opened wide like a slit-mouthed man. Unfortunately, Child Yun he didn't see his weird shape. His eyes tightly gazed at the unknown meatball on his hand. I will go to the devil. With this in his mind, Child Yun he swallowed the weird meatball with a tragic look. At first, he felt sick, then after a while, he felt that a ball of fire was burning in his stomach. Arf! Child Yun he felt that he was burning and boiling. He felt a gust of unknown power spreading within his body. Oh. Is this the power? Is this the evil god's gift? Child San Quan opened his mouth, guiding Child Yun he to finish the contract ritual with the evil god, Tlahuascalpantecutli. I swear my belief to the great Tlahuascalpantecutli. Child San Quan said. I swear my belief to the great Tlahuascalpantecutli. Child Yun he repeated. Swallow, destroy, battle. Child San Quan said. Swallow, destroy, battle. Child Yun he repeated. Only the person who presents the largest number of sacrifices can get the god's glory. Child San Quan said. Only the person who presents the largest number of sacrifices can get the god's glory. Child Yun he repeated. In the dark basement, a pale halo of light spread out and finally formed a strong figure. It had snow-white fur, a pair of eyes filled with wisdom, and arrogant appearance. For a moment, Child Yun he wondered if he summoned the wrong object. Is this animal the evil god? He hadn't seen this kind of animal in White Lotus Sword domain before, but in his opinion, it was just a tall sheep without horns. Cough. I'm Tlahuascalpantecutli, the destroyer of Western God's domain. After being defeated by Tonatiuh in the War of Gods, I went to Eastern God's domain to hide and restore my power. Child San Quan looked at the evil god in embarrassment. It was indeed an evil god. In its heyday, its power was sufficient to challenge Tonatiuh, the sun god. At the same time, it was also the god of war, massacre and destruction. Every year, countless people offered human sacrifices to it, trying to please it and obtain its bloody power. However, its true form had been sealed by the god of the sun. It became an alpaca, a sacred animal normally living in the wild of Western God's domain after that. Hiss! The alpaca knocked its hood on the ground, then walked to Child Yunhee, who was dumbfounded. Gee God, Child Yunhee didn't know what expression he should show in front of the alpaca. Don't panic. I'm an evil god who is very willing to spread my power. The white alpaca loftily raised its hoof and knocked Child Yunhee's forehead. The next moment, the messy power in Child Yunhee's body immediately became organized. Undoubtedly, this was a power that only gods could use. Thank God with me. Child San Quan said and put his palms together devoutly. His mouth had unknowingly returned to normal. Thank the evil god. Child Yunhee imitated Child San Quan's gesture, worshipping to the great evil god Tlahua's Kalpandakutli. Bah! The evil god was satisfied with them. It walked to the corner of the basement and fell asleep. Ah! What happened to the great evil god? Child Yunhee looked at the sleeping alpaca, asking Child San Quan in confusion. Don't mind it. Our great evil god just felt tired. Let's begin to prepare the sacrifices. What are the sacrifices? Of course they are, the creatures which look like our god but are blessed by the sun god. Let's hurry up. The more of those creatures our god eats, the stronger our god will become. If you want to become strong, then start to collect the sacrifices and start the blood ritual immediately. Child San Quan told Child Yunhee the blood ritual that could make him become strong. Okay. Child Yunhee saw the light and his bright future. May. You have taken away everything I had. Shortly afterwards, I will make you taste the same pain. I will rob 10 times the things that I lost to you. Achoo! Yunshi tidied the bakery shop for the last time and recalled what happened last night, then had a compulsive sneeze. Little she, don't catch a cold. It's okay to have a drink, but don't get loaded. Although Hua Hua still felt dizzy from her hangover, she still persuaded Yunshi after smelling booze on his breath. Ah! I will never get loaded, Yunshi sighed as he made butter bread for Hua Hua for the last time in the bakery shop. Indeed, he couldn't forget her. Where are you and what are you doing now? Chapter 106, The girls' group portrait. The boy and girl were walking down the familiar street. They saw familiar scenes around them. The fish shop was the first shop that opened for business on this morning. The shopkeeper was hanging one string of squids after another in front of his shop. They knew the shopkeeper. He always had a way to get a variety of fish from different places, especially all kinds of seafood such as Dositicus gigas, tuna, and North Sea squid. There was Miley Eye's flower shop down the street. Just like the fish shop, the flower shop sold all kinds of flowers from various gods' domains. From orchids, the speciality of Eastern God's domain, to the rare black rose from Western God's domain, customers could find all types of flowers that they may like in the shop. This was a common town and its ordinary townspeople. This was the place where the boy and the girl lived. They heard warm congratulations from these ordinary people. Hua Hua, are you going to Sword Palace? Well done. I'm proud of you, Hua Hua. Hua Hua, when will you marry Yunshi? Haha, another sword genius from our town. These familiar uncles and aunts blushed the boy and the girl. They smiled at the two people who were going to leave. Ah. I promise I will marry little she. I promise. Hua Hua raised Yunshi's hand with a bright smile, showing everyone that this maid was already her thing. Sigh, Yunshi sighed. He looked at his dress and snow-white hands. He really didn't want to say goodbye to everyone in the town in this manner. Hey, cute Miss Maid, please look after our Hua Hua. Yes, Hua Hua is too careless in daily life. She must have someone to look after her. Miss Maid, we will leave Hua Hua to you. None of these uncles and aunts realized that the maid was Yunshi. They enthusiastically greeted him one by one. I am not careless. At least, I can roast meat by myself. Hua Hua blushed and argued for herself. Yunshi once ate the roasted meat Hua Hua roasted. He remembered it with a grimace. Hua Hua, didn't you realize it? The meat you roasted was bad enough to kill a dragon with poison. Hua Hua, come here. Here. Everyone is here. We are all waiting for you too. At the end of the town, the leader of the female swordsmen, Hua Yu, waved her hand towards Hua Hua and Yunshi. Today, Hua Yu looked more beautiful than usual. After taking off her white silver armor, she was wearing Western-style white clothes today. The part of her clothes from her chest to her waist were black, studded with pale god buttons. Her skirt was a yellow that was as bright as autumn wheat. From her chest to her neck, her clothes were pure white. Plus her golden hair, she looked like an exalted princess from fairy stories. Her black and white thigh stockings and her thigh boots were perfectly silhouetted against her slender legs and her proud body shape. Without the constraint of her armor, her full breasts looked like they were going to push open her clothes, making it hard for her to move his eyes away. Her white gold crossed sword was hanging at her waist. After awakening her white gold rose bloodline, she was prettier than at any other time. You're beautiful. Yunshi praised her beauty with sincerity. No matter whether it was her white and flawless skin or her noble temperament, they both made her more pretty and charming. White gold rose bloodline was indeed excellent. May, don't be seduced. White gold rose bloodline is naturally a bloodline of kings. Tell me everything. Are you enchanted by Hua Yu? Looking at Yunshi's dumbfounded look, Hua Hua's jealousy radar was immediately activated. Searching. Searching. Hua Hua saw a crowd of red points which represented rivals in love around them. The 37 female swordsmen, including Hua Yu and Xiao Chao, were all being marked as her enemies on her jealousy radar. Hey, was my jealousy radar broken? Hua Hua touched that strand of cocked hair on her head and looked around, but still only saw a crowd of dense red points. Weren't the rivals in love too many? May, Hua Hua, welcome. Hua Yu didn't know that her younger female cousin had discovered something wrong. She still kept her composure and reached out her hand towards Yunshi. Thank you. I will resign myself to your guidance. Compared to Hua Hua, Yunshi looked more natural. Anyway, his relationship with Hua Yu, Xiao Chao, and other female swordsmen was very pure. He didn't need to pay too much attention to it. After all, he only poured his seeds into their bodies. There were no other links between them. Come here. Now everyone is here. Let's queue up. Hua Yu guided these female swordsmen queued up and saved the central place for Hua Hua and Yunshi. Finally, the girls formed two lines, circling around Yunshi, Hua Hua, Hua Yu and Xiao Chao. What are you doing? Yunshi looked around in confusion. I think this is a golden opportunity. It was a pretty good and memorable event that we could meet each other in Sword Palace's entrance test, and that we passed through the test at the end. So I want to do something to commemorate it, Hua Yu said. She stood on Yunshi's right and explained it to them. Master, you can get started. Hua Yu waved her hand. At first, it was just a half-baked idea. However, after discussing it with all the female swordsmen, they all agreed to this plan. Okay, everyone, stop moving. I will start to sketch. A middle-aged painter who looked a little decadent came up. He looked at these girls and his eyes gradually became impassioned. His name was Gog Nav. He was a painter who came from Western God's domain to visit Hua Yu's family. When Hua Yu requested him to make a group portrait for these girls, he was a little annoyed. He wasn't a street artist who only drew for money. He was a real art master. His works were equivalent to gold in Western God's domain. If it was an ordinary person who had requested him to make a portrait for him, he would think that his artistic talent was offended. Even if it was Hua Yu, he wasn't very willing to make a group portrait for them. However, now, something in his heart was changed. His artistic soul was screaming, and his passionate spirit was burning. He had a feeling that the group portrait he would draw today would become the best masterpiece in his life. Chapter 107. The girls scroll. Gog Nav first noticed Hua Yu, since she was the most striking girl that was as bright as a white gold rose. After awakening her white gold rose bloodline, Hua Yu was the tallest, had the most slender legs, the fullest breasts, the most gorgeous clothes, and the most eye-catching temperament. Her beauty was like her bloodline, as dignified as a king. Gog Nav drew a circle on the paper, vaguely outlining her figure. It was a figure that was as bright as a sunflower, perfect and lively. The second girl Gog Nav noticed had a very average appearance with freckles on her face, and she was carrying a common iron sword on her back. Anyway, she should be just an ordinary girl. She wasn't as bright as Hua Yu, and didn't look superior to any of the other girls. However, Gog Nav noticed a very special charm about her body. She was like a stalk of grass that was rooted in the harshest environment. Maybe you would ignore her, but she was always there. The wild wind couldn't blow her away. The rainstorm couldn't wash her away. Even an earthquake couldn't eliminate her strong will to live. Even though she was standing beside Hua Yu, but she behaved like Hua Yu's other side, ordinary and unknown. In that case, what made him pay attention to her? Was it her determined look? It seemed that something special was hiding within her body, and that thing made her stand beside Hua Yu bravely. Sunflower and grass. They were their outlines under Gog Nav's painting brush. The next few hours, Gog Nav drew one female swordsman's portrait after another. They all had their own special character and beauty. Gog Nav had never seen so many special girls in a single day. He could feel that there were some similar things within their bodies making them show their special and perfect side. Yes, that thing should be called spirituality. In the world, only very few mortals had spirituality. Whether the person was man or woman, if the person had spirituality, then that person would undoubtedly show excellent talent in his or her own field. These female swordsmen's spirituality was visible. Their confident eyes were the best evidence. They were flowers blossoming in the garden. They had a bright future. After determining every girl's place on the canvas, Gog Nav finally moved his eyes to the group center, the master and the maid. Why did he leave them to the end? In fact, even Gog Nav himself didn't know the reason. Till he began to observe the girl standing in the center. Hiss! Gog Nav gasped after just taking a glance. What is that? She can't be a human. As an art master who had strong sensibility, Gog Nav realized that at the very moment he saw Hua Hua. He immediately realized how terrible this being was. He once saw a dragon hovering in the sky, and a giant shaking the earth by simply his walking, but none of them could compare to this girl. Her strong and terrible presence wasn't something that could be described in words. This was lightning that was breaking through the sky, a volcano that was erupting. It was a natural disaster that could cause fear and unrest simply by standing at that place. He sensitively perceived that there was some terrible power bound within her body, and she kept suppressing her power with great care in case that it lost control. She wasn't like any of the other girls around her. She was a living being standing on the higher realm, but for some reason, she suppressed her power and pretended to be normal. Sword Palace. Did this monster really need to go to Sword Palace? Even if it was a real dragon, it would undoubtedly be killed by her as easy as winking. What was her bloodline? How could she have such a terrible power at this age? She was obviously still immortal. If she awakened her bloodline and reached the hero rank, what would happen at that time? Gognav couldn't imagine it, but he knew that it would be a disaster. Gognav shook his hands, strenuously drawing Hua Hua's figure on the canvas. They were a pair of wings. Gognav just drew the vague outline and didn't color it, because this was already the result of developing his artistic talent to the limit. Puff! After that, Gognav let out a sigh of relief. The most difficult part had been finished. He looked at the black-haired maid standing behind Hua Hua. This shouldn't be a difficult target. After witnessing Hua Hua's terrible temperament, he didn't think that anyone could make his heart shake again. Till he saw the pair of deep, mysterious black eyes. They weren't as bright as Hua Yu's eyes, weren't as indomitable as Xiao Chao's eyes, and weren't as overwhelming as Hua Hua's eyes. However, Gognav froze the second he saw that pair of eyes. What was this pair of eyes? He felt that he saw infinite wisdom, endless time, and boundless stars in those eyes. 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1,000 years. Gognav only peeked at a very small part of that endless time, but it already made his consciousness get lost in the flood of time, declining into deathly stillness. If Hua Hua's power meant power and dignity, then the black eyes meant tolerance and equality. Dark and light. Evil and divinity. Birth and death. In the endless time, the stars kept shining on all things in the universe, watching all things in the world, and protecting all things under the starlight. No matter whether you were evil or good, or what your race and gender was, no matter how the time flowed by and how history repeated again and again, they were always there, watching everything. They were the world itself, they were the supporting body of time, they were the base of all things' existence. They were earth, sky, river, and sea. They were fire, ice, storm, light, and dark. The stars watched all living beings' birth and death. They watched the elapse of time. The stars existed in the past, present, and future, never changing. Paw! Gognav's painting brush broke. He wasn't able to observe that any longer. The limit of his artistic talent couldn't even let him observe 1/1000th of the star's memory. He couldn't image how great a soul could bear the weight of the star's memory. Was she a girl that was blessed by the world? Cough! Gognav wiped off the blood from the corners of his mouth, then drew a few stars on the canvas. Done! Gognav turned over the canvas. A bright, beautiful group portrait, which had recorded all the girls' figures on it, appeared on the next page. As for the first page, which Gognav used his hero-ranked ability to draw and had recorded a small part of these girls' characters, he decided to name it as The Girl's Scroll, and never showed it to anyone during his lifetime. Chapter 108. The Evil God's Sacrifice. After finishing the drawing of the group portrait and hiding the real painting, Gognav's face was as pale as a vampire. However, on the contrary, his eyes looked extremely excited. How long had he lost this feeling? Trembling in excitement, his artistic inspiration was springing up from his heart. Why did he leave the familiar Western God's domain and go to the remote White Lotus Sword domain? Wasn't it to seek the limit of his art? What was art? Different people had different answers. But for him, his art was right here, in front of his eyes. Looking at the smiling girls, Gog-Nav made a decision. White Lotus Sword Palace. Gog-Nav packed up the canvas and handed over the group portrait to Hua-Yu, then showed a mysterious smile at the corners of his mouth. His decadent daily life was over. When Gog-Nav drew the group portrait for the girls, the male swordsman's camp was having a meeting. Come on. Come on. Let's drink. The bill is on me. Yunhee family's second child, who was also known as the only formal male selectee, was entertaining all the male swordsmen. The wines were good wines, and the meat was good meat. The amount was abundant enough for everyone to have a good meal. Obviously he was trying to win the people's support in this way. To be honest, it was indeed a very effective method. To the male swordsmen, especially those from civilian families, this was quite a grand banquet which they wouldn't often partake of during their lives. You're really generous. You deserve to be one of the top 16 candidates. Unfortunately, these female swordsmen were too strong. Can the tale about the black-haired maid be true? These civilian swordsmen were drinking and eating. They gradually and naturally opened their minds to each other. Since they could be listed on the alternate list, this was already the best result they had expected. Most of them wouldn't have the chance to become Sword Palace's formal disciples. The best result for them was to become one of the formal disciples' entourage. It was natural for them to curry good favor to those who had showed their talent in the entrance test. It was never an easy thing for civilian swordsmen to improve themselves. Their exercises needed large amounts of resources. Unless you were a peerless genius, otherwise it was a must-be choice to join one of the noble families. Yunhee family was one of the oldest and strongest families in White Lotus Sword domain. It was said that they were the descendants of a peerless sword master, and many hero-ranked swordsmen were from this family. At all times, there were always many people trying to serve this family. Haha, I'm still not that child, Yunhee. Our family hasn't sent the order to deprive my brother of his name. Even though the second child said it like that, but the smile on his face exposed his true feelings. The crime of losing the Crane Wing's twin swords was enough to knock down his arrogant brother. Child Yunhee, the name which only the best genius of his family could inherit, would undoubtedly become his new name. My brother, just die at ease. I will inherit everything you have, including the twin swords. As long as I take them back, that pair of highest-graded spirit weapons would become mine. At the same time, in one of the corners of the small town. What? None. Child Yunhee stared at the manager of his family's trading company with a ferocious look. Yes. I can't find any alpaca here. Even in Western God's domain, it's a very rare animal. It's a special protected animal. The manager spread out his hands and looked at Child Yunhee with a helpless look. Although Child Yunhee had lost his influence, but after all, he was still a member of Yunhee family and a third-ranked person. Even if he wouldn't be able to inherit the family head position anymore, but he could still be used as a tool to marry into another family. The manager himself was just a negligible manager, which meant that he could never disobey Child Yunhee's order. However, he couldn't satisfy Child Yunhee's wish, because the thing he ordered didn't exist in the whole White Lotus Sword domain. Child Yunhee had asked him to look for the sacred animal of Western God's domain, alpaca, for him. If he hadn't seen it from a book which introduced Western God's domain's natural environment, he wouldn't even have known what animal Child Yunhee was asking for. This was a sacred animal that only lived in the Gobi Desert of one of the countries of Western God's domain. You would never expect to see it in the Eastern God's domain. Even if there were a few alpacas in Eastern God's domain, the number wouldn't be more than the number of his fingers. No alpacas live here. Child Yunhee had almost been driven crazy. If he wanted to increase his strength, he must sacrifice living alpacas to the evil god Tlahuaskalpantacutli. However, he couldn't get any alpacas. What should he do? If you really want the animal named alpaca. I have no way to buy any grown-up alpaca, but maybe I can buy some half-blood cubs for you. The manager saw the desperate look on Child Yunhee's face. He hesitated for a while, then told him the compromised solution. Half-blood cubs. A fire named Hope was suddenly ignited in Child Yunhee's eyes. Yes. As I recall, in the past, some people carried out an experiment by using the sacred animal alpaca. Although the experiment failed, but as a byproduct, they created a table-purpose goat, which is really expensive. The goat has a part of alpaca bloodline. If you want to eat alpaca, then this kind of goats can be a very good substitute. I heard that it had very good taste. The problem is, although the goat isn't as rare as alpaca, but they are still not that easy to get. I need a lot of money, and have to buy them from the black market. The manager rubbed his index finger and thumb, implying Child Yunhee should give him money. How much is it? Child Yunhee had a very bad foreboding. It should be about this number. What? Child Yunhee was shocked. The table-purpose goat was too expensive. This is just a conservative estimate. After all, it's a rare race that doesn't exist in Eastern God's domain. Besides, it's very difficult to breed them. I have to buy them via a special method, the manager complained. In fact, it was really not a profitable business. If it wasn't because Child Yunhee suddenly awakened this special habit, he didn't want to deal with it at all. Even though Child Yunhee was in a bad situation, he was still the master. As the family's servant, the manager couldn't disobey his order. He couldn't get an alpaca for Child Yunhee, but he could get the special goat. After all, it was just a failure of hybridization experiment. I need them. Buy a male goat and a female goat for me. For the great evil god and for himself, Child Yunhee gave up his dignity. Besides that, look for the books about how to feed these kind of goats for me. Was Child Yunhee going to raise goats? The manager looked at Child Yunhee's painful face in confusion. This child's hobby was really difficult to understand. Chapter 109, The High Wall in White Lotus Sword Domain Sword Blade Area. Due to various reasons, most of the sword domains in Sky Sword God's domain look like a sword. The sword handle area was the living and trading area for ordinary people. Almost every sword handle area gathered over 90% of the ordinary population in each sword domain. The sword blade area was very dangerous. It was the habitat of various terrible and strong creatures, and was also the habitat of many sects and forces. It was a world which had both chances and danger. The sword tip area was a supreme, holy land, the location of each sword domain's sword palace. Only sword palace's disciples were entitled to live in this area. They studied and practiced by themselves, then stepped on their own road leading to the hero rank. The noble families, sects, and forces in the sword handle area and the sword blade area would try their best to recruit anyone who came out of the sword tip area. Sword Palace represented Sky Sword God's domain's orthodoxy. It was the most transcendent force of all the sword domains. Most of hero-ranked beings lived in the sword tip area under Sword Palace's control. Occasionally, even legend-ranked presences would come to Sword Palace. All the boys and girls of Sky Sword God's domain had a dream to become a disciple of Sword Palace, unless their sword talents were too poor to the extent that they couldn't see any hope. Sword was power, and sword was the god. Sword Palace was the highest inheriting system in Sky Sword God's domain. Even in the whole Eastern God's domain, the swordsmen from Sky Sword God's domain weren't nothing. They and the Taoist priest from the Heavens Road Palace were called the strongest two careers of Eastern God's domain. Is this the wall? Yunshi had lived in the sword handle area for 16 years. This was the first time he saw the high wall which protected the sword handle area. To be exact, it wasn't just a wall. It was a set of defense system. From the exposed wall to the mid-wall, then to the last interior wall, there were 3 walls that were over dozens of kilometers. Including the fortresses which were spread all over the place, they were a complete defense system that was as strong as iron. Unless there were under legend-ranked monsters attack, the defense system was almost unbreakable. Throughout history, all the defense systems in all the sword domains had only been broken very few times. The sects and forces purposely built their stations in the wild of the sword blade area. They actively eliminated the monsters living in the sword blade area. It was said that in some large sword domains, the monsters in their sword blade areas had almost been exterminated. I heard that the wall was made out of the monsters. Countless monsters' corpses accumulated and became the wall. Look at the tallest wall, it said that it was made up of giants' corpses. I know. It's not just a tale. It's really made up of giants' corpses. It said that this method can save the quantity of building materials. The female swordsman circled around Yun Shi and chirped like a group of birds. Hua Hua stared at them in anger, but couldn't directly say it out. Hey, are you blind? Mei is just a girl. Why do you get so close to him? And little Shi, don't laugh. You should remember that there's still some strangers before Sword Palace's entrance test. Why are you staying and chatting with them so naturally? It wasn't just for saving building materials used. Powerful giants' corpses can shock and awe weak monsters, and scare them to maintain a distance from the wall. The sword blade area isn't as simple as your imagination. Even if you're a hero-ranked person, you will die there if you're too careless, because that's a thing that has once happened. A hero-ranked adventure team was eliminated there by an unknown monster. As an aristocratic miss of the famous Hua family, Hua Yu placidly occupied the most advantageous position beside Yun Shi and told him about the danger. A monster that can even eliminate a hero-ranked adventure team. Is such a terrible monster really in White Lotus Sword domain? Yun Shi was shocked. He knew how frightening the hero rank was. The twin witches had left a deep impression in his heart. They were almost invincible when they were together. I don't know. At that time, even the previous master of White Lotus Sword domain came to investigate the incident, but in the end, no one found the monster. From the traces at the scene, it should be a very big monster, Hua Yu said. She was very good at guiding the topic to her familiar field. That was a natural ability of her white gold rose bloodline. According to the combat time and the combat strength, it should at least be a 5th-ranked monster. Maybe it was an alien invader dropping from the sky. Can I make a lot of money if I kill it? Xiao Chao's eyes were sparkling. Compared to the monster's terrible power, she was more concerned about the reward. Of course. The previous child Yun He was killed by that monster. Yun He family has posted a whopping cash reward. As far as I know, White Lotus Sword Palace has also posted a reward, but only hero-ranked people can accept the quest, because it is too dangerous. Hua Yu warned Xiao Chao, but Xiao Chao's eyes were still sparkling. She didn't care about the potential danger at all. The hero rank. I will try my best. Xiao Chao counted her fingers. The first finger, the 1st rank. The second finger, the 2nd rank. This was her current rank. The third finger, the 3rd rank. It shouldn't be hard to reach. After that, it was the 4th finger, the 4th rank, which was also known as the hero rank. There was still time for her to earn money to buy equipment before that. Well, after 2 fingers, she would be able to accept that quest. As the old saying stated, the poor children manage household affairs early. Since there was such a profitable quest waiting for her, she should improve herself as soon as possible. You don't underestimate the hero rank too much. Hua Yu found Xiao Chao's plan both funny and annoying. Once a person reached the hero rank, that also meant that the person had exceeded the limit of his life. How many geniuses couldn't reach this realm till their deaths? How many civilian swordsmen sold themselves to noble families, just to exchange for a possibility of breaking the invisible barrier stopping them from reaching the hero rank? No. If it was her, sooner or later, she would be able to reach the 4th rank. Yunxi felt the growth speed of Xiao Chao's seed and made that judgment in his heart. After practicing the basic sword skill to the limit and learning mortal sword, perfect, the more difficult the sword skill Xiao Chao practiced, the easier she would feel it became. From the 1st rank to the 2nd rank, it was the most difficult time for Xiao Chao. To Xiao Chao, who had mortal sword, perfect, combat instinct, and hard eye, she would be able to reach the next several ranks as easily as blowing off dust. Chapter 110, Setting Sail on the Wall, which was far away from Yunxi, Hua Yu, and Xiao Chao. The border guards were looking at the huge ship suspended in the air in excitement. White Lotus was a floating ship that was named after White Lotus Sword Domain. It was 3 kilometers long and 300 meters wide. Even in the whole Sky Sword God's domain, it was one of the top 100 floating ship and White Lotus Sword Domain's final battle fortress. Normally, it could carry 1,000 people, whilst its limit was 3,000 people. It was the pride and representation of the whole White Lotus Sword Domain. To the mortal world, it was a miracle that only appeared in fairy stories. It was too large. Even though it was just suspended there and doing nothing, its size was sufficient to make mortals prostrate themselves in worship. It was the crystallization of the whole Eastern civilization. It was a world-shaking treasure that was created by Heaven's Road Palace and Sword Palace together. It needed over 100 operators and at least a hero-ranked Taoist priest to control it. If it was necessary, it could also become a hanging field for doing rescue and relief work. It was one of the cores of the whole White Lotus Sword Domain's armies. It was the only floating ship in the whole White Lotus Sword Domain. Every year when Sword Palace finished recruiting its new disciples, the ship would fly to this district, wait for the new disciples, then fly back to the sword tip area. This also meant that mortal soldiers who were stationed there would only see the legendary floating ship at this time every year. Due to the military ban, only the luckiest soldiers could go to the ship to help carry supplies. After they came back, this would become a topic of conversation for their lifetime. I really envy these new disciples. I'm also at the 2nd rank, why can't I go to Sword Palace? A bearded team leader, who was as strong as a bear, looked at these young boys and girls with a depressed look. Come on, sir. You're already 39 years old, and these 2nd-ranked kids are only 16 or 17 years old. You're simply not at the same realm. The team leader's adjutant patted him on his shoulders and said, "They're real geniuses and the future of our White Lotus Sword Domain. Realize it, we can't go to Sword Place. The only thing we can do is to be promoted in the army and raise our offspring. If our children can go to Sword Palace, even if they just become the formal disciple servants, that would be good enough." Not far away from the 2 senior officers, soldiers were chatting about a rumor. Have you heard the news? A miracle occurred in one of the examination areas. There were about 40 female swordsmen that passed the entrance test. I heard that they had all obtained a special blessing. Yes, I also heard that from my relatives. The blessing was a black-haired female swordsman's strand of hair. It said that her black hair has a special magical power. The people who obtain the black-haired girl's strand of hair will become very lucky. Look! That's her, that girl standing at the bow, the girl who has the most beautiful black hair. Several scouts saw the legendary black-haired girl on the ship. Not only them, many people believe this rumor. After all, even if it was just fake news, it wouldn't do any harm. Therefore, the black-haired girl was becoming a legend. On the ship, White Lotus, Yunshi suddenly felt cold on his back, as if there were many people gazing at him. That's strange. Why are so many people gazing at me? Did I do something that makes them do this? In every direction and even several kilometers away, people were all gazing at him. What had happened? May, your black hair has become the most popular legend now. Finally, while you explained to him, many of my friends asked me to ask for a strand of hair from you. They hoped that it could bless them. But, that's just a rumor. Yunshi looked at Hua Yu's smiling face and didn't know whether to cry or to laugh. If they really believed that, then his hair would be in danger. Would they pick all his hair out, making him become a baldy? Is it really just a rumor? Hua Yu gazed at Yunshi with a meaningful look. There must be a reason for a rumor to begin. At least she knew that for her own change, there couldn't be any other explanation. Not only her, including Xiao Chao, the reason why the 37 female swordsmen gathered together and formed a team was all due to May. May, you're the only person who still doesn't know your value. Your black hair really has magical power. That's why the rumor about the black-haired girl is so reliable. Yes. My hair is very common, of course. Yunshi couldn't tell her that what changed these girls was not his hair, but his seeds. His black hair was just a medium. It didn't contain any magical power. If so, then, you are that unusual reason. Hua Yu accepted his explanation, but that made her more confident that Yunshi was special. Otherwise, it couldn't explain why her heart beat so fast when she stood beside Yunshi. She felt that something was growing in her heart, and it changed her physique bit by bit. That was the mysterious power which had helped her awaken her white gold rose bloodline and reach the second rank. I'm just a very common maid. Yunshi felt nervous and afraid. You are a great sword maid, who has the third maid's uniform, killing princess. You can't be common, Hua Yu said. She casually exposed Yunshi's lie. Yunshi didn't know how many girls in Western God's domain were eager for this great sword legacy. After all, it was one of the strongest careers in the whole Western God's domain. Attention! The ship is leaving. With the sound of the ship's whistle, the shipmaster's loud voice suddenly came from the top to the deck. Hoot! One white halo after another started to cover the whole floating ship. This meant that the ship, White Lotus, was going to leave. With the support of Heaven Road's palace's perfect spells, even though the ship was suspended in the air several meters away from the ground, it was still as steady as it would have been on the ground. It even allowed Sword Palace's new disciples to gather on the deck and witness it with their naked eyes. Chapter 111, The Big World Boom. The big ship, White Lotus, ripped through one cloud after another, flying into the sky higher. Soon afterwards, White Lotus had flown into the sky and it was over 10,000 meters away from the ground. The boys and girls on the ship were very excited, because they were seeing the clouds under their feet for the first time in their lives. Even if hero-ranked creatures weren't very likely to have the ability to fly to this height. Only the ship, White Lotus, the gem of wisdom, that was beyond mortal's limit, could leap over the distance, flying to this forbidden zone. The floating ship, White Lotus, looked like a huge white lotus inlaid on a floating ship. Every lotus petal was engraved with complicated patterns that made it form a single magical circle. When they linked together, these single magical circles formed a colossal, compounded magical circle. The 3,000 lotus petals were enough to block any hero-ranked creature's attack. The strongest attack unit in the whole White Lotus sword domain wasn't the master of White Lotus God's domain, but the floating ship. After spending over 100 years to build the floating ship, the airline from the sword handle area to the sword tip area hadn't even had a single accident. The Sword Palace's new disciples were lucky. Several hundred years ago, their predecessors had to walk across the long sword blade area to reach the legendary Holy Land, Sword Palace. Even though their team leader was an experienced hero-rank teacher, they couldn't avoid all accidents. Once, one of the worst accidents had killed about half of the new disciples at that time. After that tragic accident, Sword Palace paid a few decades of their fiscal budget to build the ship, White Lotus, along with Heaven's Road Palace. At the center of the Lotus was the core of the floating ship. The twin witches were staying there. Now, Red Lotus was talking about sword skills with Hua Hua. Usually, Hua Hua was very interested in discussing sword skills with Red Lotus. However, she looked a little distracted now. She often turned back and gazed at the girls on the deck. "What's up? Why do you care about them so much? These girls are not bad, but they can't compare to you. You are the most special one," Red Lotus said. She realized that Hua Hua was absent-minded, then also looked at the deck with a doubtful look. "I have a foreboding," Hua Hua said. She stared at the several girls around Yunxi, especially her elder female cousin, Hua Yu. "Why can you occupy the closest place beside Yunxi so easily? That should be my place. Even though you're my elder female cousin, I won't give little Shi to you." Hua Yu felt Hua Hua's scorching sight. She raised her head, waving her hands to Hua Hua with a pleasant look. "Look! Hua Hua is looking at us." "Oh, Hua Hua must feel worried," Yunxi let out a sigh of relief. He wasn't used to Hua Yu's passion. Shouldn't an aristocratic miss be very reserved? Why was she so proactive? Did she find something wrong? My disguise should be flawless. "Come here, May. I found a good place." Taking the opportunity that Hua Yu was distracted by Hua Hua, Xiao Chao held Yunxi's hand and left the crowd. Xiao Chao's mortal sword talent was a great help. She could always find an interesting place which ordinary people wouldn't discover. Now, they were at the forefront of the ship, where a lotus-shaped figurehead was placed. It was said that the ships in Western God's domain often used mermaid-shaped figureheads, but the ships in Eastern God's domain didn't have this specific requirement. Different sword domains in Eastern God's domain used different figureheads. White Lotus's figurehead was a beautiful lotus throne. It was covered in warm white lights, which protected it from any potential storms and moisture. Isn't this a forbidden zone? Yunxi had noticed the lotus throne a while ago, but when he tried to come here, he had felt that an invisible force stopped him. The force was used to tell them that no one was allowed to enter this place. "It doesn't matter. I have found a method to enter here," Xiao Chao said with a nonchalant expression. She casually sat beside Yunxi, then took off her shoes. Her feet were white and tender. The size of her soles were perfect and her toes were as round as pearls. "When I was very small, I often imagined what the world outside town looked like. The uncles and aunts in the village told me that if I didn't leave the town, I would miss many good things. As they said, after I left the town, I met many people and learned many things I couldn't learn in the town. In the outside world, there are good people and bad people, there are people who are weaker than me and there are people who are stronger than me. If I didn't leave the town, I wouldn't have known that the world was so big. Look, May. This is the sky." Xiao Chao held Yunxi's hand and let him sit beside her. "And we are flying. We are flying in the very, very high sky." Xiao Chao started singing. Her voice was clear and melodious, and her song was naive, but contained innate sincerity. When Yunxi heard the song, he felt that there was an invisible hand stroking him, making his heart feel relaxed and peaceful. He quietly watched the blue sky, the clouds which constantly disappeared and appeared under his feet, and the big, bright sun. Everything was so refreshing and bracing. Unlike when he looked at the sky from the ground, when he really stood above the clouds, he really felt his insignificance and the boundlessness of the world. Under the blue sky, even the ship White Lotus, which was 3 kilometers long, also looked like a leaf in the boundless sea. Hey! Xiao Chao was suddenly interested. She bared her feet and jumped around, looking at Yun Shi with a bright smile. May! Come see more beautiful scenes with me. It's a very, very wonderful feeling to be beside you. Xiao Chao said. She opened her hands wide and shouted at the endless sky, Xiao Chao and May will be best friends forever. Her hands were small, but in Yunshi's eyes, she had hugged the entire sky in her arms. She basked in the golden sunshine, as glamorous as a golden fairy. Oh, Xiao Chao was so cute. Chapter 112. The door in the clouds. In the gloaming above the sea of clouds, the huge ship, White Lotus, rode the wind and waves, flying towards Sword Palace. The endless sea of clouds swept past White Lotus. The height was already beyond the limit any normal living being could reach. Even eagles couldn't fly to this height. Only the sound of air billowing was following White Lotus. During the flight, the ship didn't even have small vibrations. It was more stable than any large ship on the sea. A day passed, and the feeling of freshness had begun to fade away. Many Sword Palace's disciples had gone back to their rooms, practicing by themselves and waiting for their coming lives in Sword Palace. No matter whether they were formal disciples or just alternate disciples, everyone was struggling for their future. Yun Shi, Xiao Chao, Hua Yu and the other female swordsmen sneaked into the lotus throne-like area on the bow, which no one was allowed to enter for safety reasons. They watched White Lotus flying in the sky, parting the air like a ship breaking the wind and waves on the sea. Although the ship was about 3 kilometers long, but in the lotus throne-like area at the bow, it was crowded with these female swordsmen. Xiao Chao's stealth ability was like a bug. With her help, this forbidden zone completely opened up to the girls. That's too high. Incredible. Is this White Lotus's true speed? Why is it so fast? How can it be so steady at this speed? The girls huddled together and looked around, clicking their tongues at the magical-like power the White Lotus showed. The ship is about 10 times faster than sound velocity. According to the sun's position and the mountains under the ship, Huayu had figured out the ship's speed. It was so fast, but the people on the ship didn't even feel a bit of wind or increase of gravity. It was all due to the magical spells engraved on the ship. The mortals in the sword handle area wouldn't even see such a miracle once during their lifetimes, not to mention understand it. So, the ship has flown over 300,000 kilometers? Yunshi calculated the distance, then surprisingly found that he had traveled such a long distance from the sword handle area. Most of the people who lived in the small town wouldn't go to a place 100 kilometers away from their town. To them, their world was only within about 100-mile radius. After all, only very few people had the luck to use the floating ship, White Lotus. That's not a long distance. If you take the Star Bridge, you can leap across dozens of light years in a day. Of course, the star bridges only link the mortal worlds. For security and political reasons, all the gods' domains don't allow building a star bridge in their core areas. Inside each god's domain, only air units like the floating ship can be called the ultimate force. Even in the whole Sky Sword God's domain, White Lotus is the only top-class floating ship. Its weapon system can even suppress the whole sword domain. It's the safest mode of travel. Hua Yu explained the special meaning of White Lotus and placidly moved close to Yunshi. Her breast's softness and resiliency made Yunshi's face turn red. Is this a special intimate activity between girls? What should he do? Yunshi knew nothing about this. He didn't know if he should accept it or refuse it. The seed was growing. Yunshi could clearly feel that due to Hua Yu's intimate behavior, her seed were growing fast. Why? As a perfect aristocratic miss, her actions were too resolute. Was this also a part of a lady's education? Look! The setting sun is so beautiful. Oh! It looks like the sky is burning. Wait! Look at that spot. Is something in the clouds? The girl's screams awakened Yunxi. He raised his head, witnessing the fantastic scene together with all the female swordsmen. At the farthest horizon, yellow, black, and green clouds formed a tremendous vortex, rotating at an incredible speed. Red, blue, and purple lightning cheerfully jumped back and forth amongst the clouds. Their lights broke through the rain curtain, illuminating the whole sky as bright as day. The whole world was divided into two pieces by a rainbow-like light. Half of the sky was covered with lightning and storms. The edge of the lightning was so bright and magnificent. It traversed the line between the sky and the sea, stretching away like a boundless wall. Even if the wall had an end, it must be at hundreds of miles away. The other half of the sky still looked normal. As if there was a god controlling the lightning, they stopped in front of an invisible dividing line and none of them overstepped the boundary. On the border line, a blue door was opening slowly. What's this? Is there such a thing existing in the airline? The twin witches stood up together. Red Lotus drew out her sword, and White Lotus started to divine. The door, Yunxi looked at the door in shock. It was familiar. He was all too familiar with that door. He had seen this door countless times in his dream and imagined what was behind the door. Now, the door had suddenly emerged. Not in his dream, but in the real world. Then, where was the door guardian? Where was that girl who had always appeared in his dream and killed him countless times? He had never forgotten her 3 strands of icy blue hair, the sword-shaped ribbon at her waist, and her blue sword which was always put in front of the closed door. Bang! 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 Earth-shaking knocking sounds came from behind the door, echoing between heaven and earth. As the lightning flashed and the thunder roared, visible distortions and oscillations appeared on the door, as if something was trying to break the door by force. No! I have figured out it. White Lotus, make a turn at full speed. Red Lotus and White Lotus almost shouted at the same time. Red Lotus's battle instinct was warning her, and White Lotus had figured out the danger by observing the chaotic environment. Unfortunately, it was too late. Before the ship, White Lotus turned, an invisible wave had leaked out from the crack in the door. Boom! The huge White Lotus turned over in the air as if it was a leaf in furious billows. Chapter 113, Intruder Woa. What's that? No, no. It's coming. The girls at the bow were the first to bear the shock waves. Even though the ship's magical defense circle had blocked over 99% of the shock waves, but the remainder still made the ship rotate in the sky. However, that was just the beginning. Bang! 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 As the banging sounds echoed throughout heaven and earth, the knocking sounds from the door were becoming stronger and stronger, clearer and clearer. As if there was an indestructible boundary in the air, and now, it was being broken and crushed. Everyone, on full alert. White Lotus, entering avoidance mode. In all of Red Lotus's days alive, this was the first time that she encountered such a dangerous event of which she didn't even know how she could avoid it. No matter whether it was the door which suddenly emerged in the clouds, or the thing which was going to break the door, they were all beyond her capability. Sister, be careful. That thing is going to break the door. White Lotus's face looked shaky. She had a premonition of what was going to happen. If it wasn't because of the bright lights emitted from her star and moon's ring dispelling a part of the terrible breath spreading from behind the door, she wouldn't even be able to stand up. The stronger you were, the more danger you would feel. She clearly knew how terrible the thing behind the door was. Damn it. How can such a terrible monster come to this sword domain? The world's rules doesn't support it to do this. Hua's reaction wasn't any better than White Lotus. The door that suddenly appeared was too inexplicable. No, it's not safe here. We should jump off the ship. Even Hua didn't think that she could beat down the monster behind the door. Even if she tried her best, the best outcome would be to escape with Yunxi. As for the other people, she could only pray for their luck. How could the rules of Sky Sword God's domain support such a monster to come to this sword domain? Was the world going to be destroyed? The door and the monster behind the door were something that absolutely shouldn't appear in this sword domain. White Lotus sword domain was like a waveless pond that was used to keep fish fries, and the monster behind the door was like a great white shark that was suddenly thrown into the pond. No, maybe the monster wasn't just a great white shark. It could even be more dangerous, like a whale. Even if this kind of creature just appeared in the sword domain and did nothing, its very existence was already able to shake the world structure, or even make the world collapse. Bang! The seemingly indestructible blue door finally started to collapse under the unknown monster's attacks. A crack suddenly appeared in its center. At first, it was just a negligible crack that could be barely observed. However, as the old saying goes, a small leak will sink a great ship. Soon afterwards, the second crack, the third crack, the fourth crack, countless cracks appeared on the door. When the people on the ship saw these cracks with their naked eyes, it was already too late. A gust of waves spread out from the door. Even the ship, White Lotus, which was protected by a compounded magical circle which could block all hero-ranked attacks, was still as weak as a paper in front of the wave. After losing the magical circle's protection, White Lotus shook in the air like a feeble girl. It couldn't block the terrible shock waves any longer. The disciples who were living in the ship didn't even know what was happening. They were thrown to the ceiling or the floor at this time. Some of them couldn't handle the pressure and vomited everywhere. Be careful. Everyone, hold each other's hand. The female swordsmen were all on the bow. They held each other's hands, withstanding the terrible shock waves together. With Yun Shixi's help, they perfectly gave full play of their abilities. After gathering everyone's strength, they finally survived the shock waves. However, the most terrible thing was just coming. Ding! 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 Glass-breaking sounds resounded in the air. However, the thing that was breaking wasn't glass but the blue door. Breaking the void. Forced space leap. Transcended power. Red Lotus, White Lotus, and Hua shouted at the same time. They said different words, but meant the same thing. The monster was breaking the void, coming to this world from a place which was maybe 10 million light years away. This monster couldn't belong to Sky Sword God's domain, but an intruder who had the ability to leap through the void. As a boy who was born in the small town, Yunxi couldn't image what it was. However, as the future masters of White Lotus Sword Domain and the successor of Sky Flying Bloodline, the twin witches and Hua knew of its power clearly. As a monster who could break the door, it was at least at the 8th rank, or higher. The strongest person in White Lotus Sword Domain was only at the 6th rank. In this case, the monster was even able to destroy the whole sword domain as easy as a piece of cake. Countless fragments divided in the sky, turning into beautiful blue light points. However, in Red Lotus, White Lotus, and Hua's eyes, they were not beautiful light points but a dreadful sign, an unavoidable disaster. It's coming. White Lotus, give up defense and turn around at full speed. Red Lotus plunged her Red Lotus Holy Sword into the control platform and immediately turned off the ship's defense system. Anyway, the ship's magical defense circle was meaningless in front of the coming monster. The floating ship wasn't designed to fight against an 8th-ranked monster. It wouldn't even be stronger than a piece of paper in front of it. The best choice was to fly away as fast as possible. I have projected it out. Its body is about 100 kilometers long and its weight is as heavy as a star. Impossible to calculate more details. White Lotus couldn't believe the monster's information that she had calculated by using her skill, the Great Circle. Such a monster couldn't be born in any small sword domain like White Lotus sword domain. It was too massive. Even if it did nothing and just fell to the ground, it would definitely cause a violent earthquake, which may even be able to destroy the whole sword domain. Compared to the 8th-ranked monster, White Lotus sword domain was really too small. Chapter 114, The Apostle Comes. Coo. 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 Unknown sounds came from nowhere, echoing between the heaven and the earth and shaking all people's souls. The clouds, lightning, and storms had all suddenly vanished. A silver paranormal creature swam out from the broken door. Its body was over 100 kilometers long. Its head looked like a translucent diamond with 3 silver horns. Under its head, at the center of its waist and on the place near its tail, there were 3 pairs of silver-blue wings. Its tail had 3 big caudal fins with noticeable wounds on them. Obviously, it was using the tail which was big enough to paddle in the void to knock the blue door. In the center of its diamond-like head, there was a giant silver gem. Its scarlet eyes were gazing at the ship, White Lotus, and the distant horizon. After it squeezed into the world from the door, the sky suddenly cleared up and all the clouds suddenly vanished. Endless blue spread to the end of the sky, which was so magnificent and gave people an illusion that the world was stopped at this time. White Flood Dragon. Its appearance made Red Lotus remember the Flood Dragon race. It was a quite famous race in Eastern God's domain. No, it isn't. White Lotus refuted Red Lotus's guess. She didn't think that it was an 8th-ranked flood dragon, for most true-bred dragons were only at the hero rank, not to mention half-blood flood dragon race. No, it's not a dragon belonging to Eastern God's domain. It is a white holy dragon. A natural fantasy species. The most beautiful holy dragon. Hua Hua realized the silver dragon's true identity. White Holy Dragon was an extremely rare dragon race. Hua Hua had only read of their record in an ancient book. The silver gem on its forehead was a rare treasure called White Dragon's Crystal. Due to that, White Holy Dragon race had almost been exterminated 10,000 years ago. In addition to its White Dragon's Crystal, its wings, tail, fins, and scales could all be used to make powerful weapons. Because their hearts were too innocent, they were betrayed by the humans they trusted. As a result, the entire race was almost exterminated. After that, white holy dragons disappeared from Western God's domain and had become an old tale. Who would imagine that a white holy dragon would suddenly appear in a remote sword domain in the distant Eastern God's domain? It's looking for me. Hua Hua's eyes suddenly became shrewd. So, they finally found her. As she had expected, the dragon god wasn't willing to forgive the rebellious sky-flying bloodline. In her view, only the dragon god, Asha's dragon god's domain, still had a few white holy dragons. Why were you so cruel? In order to exterminate the dragon race's natural enemy, sky-flying bloodline, you actually sent the rare white holy dragon to kill me. Sorry, little she, Red Lotus, White Lotus, and everyone, I implicated you. This, what? Yunshi's mouth parched and his tongue scorched. He dumbly gazed at the huge monster in the sunny sky, as if the lightning and dark clouds he saw just now was just some jokes. Not only Yunshi. All the people who were gazing at the great creature were speechless. They couldn't find any words to describe their shock, for the distance amongst their life forms were too great. Master, be careful. It is that apostle. As anxiety swept through Yunshi's heart, he heard Mayer's voice in his mind. Are you kidding me? You are saying that this monster is the 7th-ranked apostle? Yunshi opened his mouth wide, gazing at the dragon in shock. It was really a beautiful creature, however, its behavior of breaking the door by force and its huge body were enough to disarm everyone's fighting will. This was one of his ex-girlfriend's apostles, the enemy he would soon face. Well, it has probably upgraded recently. It is already at the 8th rank now. After all, it's one of your ex-girlfriend's apostles. Its talent must be very good, Mayer whispered haltingly. What can I do? I don't think that I can defeat it. Yunshi gazed at the white holy dragon with a desperate look. He found that the biggest crisis in his life suddenly appeared in front of him. It was more dangerous than the green hippo he had defeated. Even if there were 1,000,000 green hippos, they would be nothing if compared to the apostle. How long had he awakened his ability as the Star Child? Why did he meet such a monster so early? This wasn't as simple as a joke. He would die. Don't worry. It should have just known that you are in this sword domain but doesn't know your specific location. This should be just a regular search. Master, you should be careful. You'd better never turn off your great sword maid's uniform. If it finds you, you won't have any chance to escape. Okay. I see, Yunshi let out a sigh of relief. So, he hadn't exposed his true identity and this was just the apostle's regular search. Fortunately, the worst situation didn't happen. He shouldn't give up hope till the last second. Coo! 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 The white holy dragon scanned the small sword domain for a while, then suddenly swung its tail. As if the ship, White Lotus, was just a negligible leaf but not the strongest weapon of the whole White Lotus sword domain, the white holy dragon's tail easily swung the ship down from the sky. After that, the silver crystal on the dragon's forehead emitted endless lights, wrapping the whole core area of White Lotus sword domain into its range. Pearl! 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 Yunshi heard the sound of flowing water. He felt that the water was very close, but also at a very far away place. Master, was someone calling him? Master! Wake up! This is not good. Mayer's worried voice echoed in Yunshi's ears. He ground his teeth and strenuously opened his eyes. His mouth was full of the taste of seawater. He wanted to vomit but couldn't vomit anything. Cough! Cough! Yunshi coughed on the beach. Mayer continuously licked his face to help him clean the seaweed on his face. Did we fall overboard? Yun 11 vaguely remembered that he saw a boundless sea when the ship, White Lotus, dropped from the sky. He remembered that the twin witches were casting a protection magic on everyone, and his childhood sweetheart was trying her best to fly towards him at that time. Unfortunately, Hua Hua didn't catch up to him. She was blown away by the floating ship's wreckage. After that, his memory blanked. Chapter 115. In Stranded Yunshi remembered the last scene he had seen before he fell from the sky. The white holy dragon, which was to be one of his ex-girlfriend's apostles, swept its tail, then the strongest air fortress in the whole sword domain, White Lotus, was knocked down, and disintegrated in the air. The ship's bow and stern were directly stripped from the ship, and the lotus-like throne, which was engraved with countless magical defense circles, also turned into countless fragments, floating and swaying in the sky. When the ship disintegrated, the shock wave almost stunned everyone on the ship. At first, the female swordsmen were still holding each other's hands trying to withstand the pressure, but they failed. They fell, separated from each other. Cough. Is this the enemy I will soon face? Yunshi leaned against a coconut tree on the beach, gazing at the massive ship fragments floating on the sea. The most noticeable fragment was the lotus throne that was only 30% of its original size, but still emitted soft lights. It attracted countless fish to come here. Amongst the fish, there even broke out a war to fight for ownership of the remaining white lotus throne. Yunshi could see water columns spraying out of the water from time to time. Master, don't be frustrated. As long as you are still becoming stronger and stronger, you will be able to beat down that apostle someday. Mayer continuously picked useful materials from the ship's wreckage on the beach. Her mental state was 100 times better than Yunshi. Well, you really trust me, Yunshi sighed. He didn't have his previous life's memory, so he also didn't know how strong he was. After all, he was just a second-ranked swordsman now. He had the confidence to reach the third rank in a short period, but that didn't mean he wanted to face the 8th-ranked apostle. If the apostle found him, no one could save him. Master is the greatest presence. This is the reason why the 4 overlords fight for you. Moreover, if you didn't create me, I wouldn't come to this world. Several fish were stunned by the shock wave and washed onto the beach. Maya held them in her mouth and gazed at Yunshi with an adoring look. I'm really curious about how I could have had 4 overlord-ranked girlfriends in my last life. Yunshi complained about the mistake he made in his last life. After a while, he regained a little of his energy. He surely couldn't beat down the 8th-ranked apostle. However, the apostle had disappeared, seeing that it hadn't found out that he was on the ship. White Lotus's misfortune was just an accident. It had just gotten in the apostle's way. Anyway, I want to go on living. Mayor, come back. Yunshi whistled, then Mayor turned into a golden light and flew into Yunshi's body. Yunshi could let Mayor stay in his body in the star elf form. He had naturally understood how to use this ability after he awakened his memory as the Star Child. The little star elf had 2 forms, an entity form as the golden dog, and a virtual body form as the star elf. When Yunshi first met Mayor, he didn't have enough power to let Mayor turn into the star elf form. This was one of the rewards he had obtained after he completed the formal trial. I hope that other people are still alive, Yunshi murmured. He closed his eyes, searching for other people through his seeds. According to his memory, the crash site depended on the location when they were on the ship, which meant that the female swordsmen were very likely to drop into the nearby sea area. 1, 2, 3. Yunshi carefully counted the number of the seeds which were still linked with him, then let out a sigh of relief. The protection magic the twin witches cast at the last moment had worked very well. None of the female swordsmen had died. 37 seeds were still linked with him. That was really something worth celebrating. Yunshi vaguely figured out the distance between him and the girls through the seeds. He couldn't clearly feel the twin witches, Huahua, Milei, Alphyllis and Yili. Obviously, they were at different, but very far away places. Huayu, Xiao Chao, and other female swordsmen were very close to him. Even if they were not on the island, their locations wouldn't be far away. I need to hurry up and save them. With the guide of the seeds, Yunshi used the skill, Quicksilver Motion, running towards a place on the island at his full speed. Even though they fell from the same place, but due to the White Holy Dragon's shock wave and the airstream caused due to White Lotus's disintegration, they dropped into different places. The first girl Yunshi found was Huayu. She hadn't fallen into the sea, but hung onto a large coconut tree. She was in a coma due to the massive impact. Her full breasts were hanging on a branch. Her gorgeous dress was already in shreds and patches, exposing her snow-white skin. If it wasn't because the white light on her body protected her when she fell from the sky, she would already be dead. Huayu, wake up. Yunshi touched her forehead to feel her temperature and anxiously called her name, trying to wake her up. Cough. Cough. Am I dead? Huayu slowly opened her eyes, then saw a heaven-like scene. Fresh air, bright sunlight, boundless blue sky, and a black-haired girl who was hugging her in her arms and looking at her with a warm and worried look. "Ah, is this the heaven?" Hua Yu thought in her heart. If this was her life after death, it looked pretty nice. "No, you are not dead. We fell from the sky. Are you injured?" Yunxi looked at Hua Yu with a worried look because she was still coughing. "Oh, I'm not dead. Thank you. Are my ribs broken?" Hua Yu quickly realized what happened. Well, this wasn't heaven, but the girl who was hugging her in her arms was her real angel. Staying alive is better than anything, Yunxi comforted her. He had tasted too many deaths. They were really some of his most horrible memories. "Yes. You are here, so I won't go to the afterlife," Hua Yu said with a smile. She struggled, trying to stand up. As a knight who had white golden rose bloodline, how could she surrender to her minor injuries? Even if she would die with vigor and vitality. "Mei, where are we?" Yunxi supported Hua Yu with his hand. Hua Yu looked around and her eyes gradually became calm. "I have good news and bad news," Yunxi smiled bitterly. He told Hua Yu his guess. "The good news is that we are still alive. I think that other people are also alive. The bad news is that this place is probably located in the core area of White Lotus Sword Domain. We all know that this place is a forbidden zone, for it may have legendary hero-ranked monsters." "You mean, we are stranded?" Hua Yu correctly judged the situation. "Yes. Not only us. I'm afraid that all the people that had been on the ship are stranded now." Chapter 116, Search and Rescue. We fell in the nearby area, which means that there may be other people stranded here. Hua Yu was really an excellent aristocratic miss who had inherited white gold rose bloodline. She quickly analyzed the situation. They are all on this island and the nearby areas," Yunxi answered. He felt the seeds again, making sure that no other female swordsmen were in danger. However, for some reason he didn't know, his feeling about Hua's seed and the twin witches' seeds were becoming more and more difficult to perceive. "Well, put me down and let us go look for the others," Hua Yu said. She looked around and made a decision. "Don't worry about me. I can still move. The most important thing now is to search for them." "Are you really okay?" Yunxi looked at Hua Yu with worry. He knew that her ribs were broken. "I have white gold rose bloodline. I'm not that weak a girl." Hua Yu looked around and found a place which was suitable to be their temporary foothold. That was a platform on a barren rock wall, which was a really good place to observe the surrounding environment. Even if they encountered monsters, the terrain could help them resist for a period of time. Besides, her white gold rose bloodline could let her recover herself 10 times faster than ordinary people. She would be able to recover 70% of her power after about 10 hours. Rip. Hua Yu tore her ripped dress to make bandages to bind up her broken ribs. After that, she worked on the platform to build their temporary camp. As for Yunxi, he was quickly running towards the backland of the island. "Go. Look for everyone and save them. Mei, you are the strongest and the best of us. You should know that with great power comes great responsibility." Hua Yu's words were still echoing in Yunxi's heart, which really made him look at her with new eyes. So, not all aristocratic misses were hothouse flowers, at least, Hua Yu wasn't a feeble girl. Here. Soon afterwards, Yunxi found another girl who was in a coma. She was one of the female swordsmen. Her condition was better than Hua Yu. Although her clothes was also ripped, but she had fallen onto a thick and soft creep cluster which greatly reduced the impact. "Ling Ling, wake up." Yunxi remembered her name. She was one of Hua Yu's subordinates and came from a declined noble family. Woa! Am I dead? Ling Ling faintly opened her eyes, then saw the blue sky, white clouds, and a black-haired angel. You are not dead. Hua Yu is waiting for you. Yunshi had a complex feeling. Why did they think that they had died when they saw him? Oh, I'm not dead. What a pity. I thought that I was in heaven. Ling Ling looked regretful, then was helped up by Yunshi. Ai. Gee. May. Ling Ling blushed. She was at a loss in Yunshi's arms. We can talk later. Let us go to Hua Yu's place first. As the only uninjured person, Yunshi's physical strength was still at its peak. He held Ling Ling in his arms and continuously performed quicksilver motion. He didn't only obtain understanding and experience about sword skills from the 37 female swordsmen. Something else also flowed into his heart. Therefore, when he took Ling Ling up in his arms, he didn't feel that it was inappropriate. Similarly, Ling Ling also didn't resist his behavior. She just blushed with her heart pounding heavily. Isn't this my heaven? Ling Ling glanced at Yunshi with a sweet feeling in her heart. I have found one. After entrusting Ling Ling to Hua Yu, Yunshi didn't take a rest. He immediately jumped down from the platform and started to search for other survivors. After finding Hua Yu and Ling Ling, Yunshi felt that he was more familiar with his seed searching system. Within 3 hours, he had found 17 girls from the area within a 10-mile radius. However, as he kept searching, he was more and more confused about something. That's so strange. How could we all fall on the same island? At the same time, Hua Yu had become the temporary leader of these female swordsmen. She also considered this question. She didn't know the existence of Yunshi's seeds. In that case, she was more puzzled about how Yunshi could find so many people so quickly. In terms of probability, it's impossible. They fell from the ship more than 10,000 meters high in the sky. Even if they were holding each other's hands when they fell, it was still impossible that their landing locations were so close. The next 10 hours, Yunshi was still looking for the girls. Not surprisingly, he found almost all the remaining girls. When Yunshi found them, they were all in a coma with vague white lights protecting them. Some of them fell on trees, some of them were dropped on creep clusters, and some of them were washed onto the beach just like Yunshi himself. 36 people, where is Xiao Chao? Yunshi put the last girl he found on the platform, then gasped for air as his brows frowned. By relying on the seeds, he could vaguely judge the distance between him and the girls. In order to find the 36 girls, he had almost gone around the whole island. However, Xiao Chao's seed wasn't on the island but in the sea. He didn't know the exact location and could only figure out the general direction. You must be tired, May. Yes, May, you should take a rest. Come here, do you want to drink water? Thank you, May. I don't know what would have happened if we didn't have you. The girls surrounded Yunshi with concern. Via the threads of their seeds, Yunshi could feel their sincerity. Their eyes also proved that they weren't lying. Thanks. But I must find everyone, otherwise, I won't get to rest. Yunshi drank the cold water. He wiped his mouth, then jumped off the platform again. Since the seed had pointed out the direction for him, then no matter where Xiao Chao was, he must find her. They were a team of 37 female swordsmen. No one could be less. Chapter 117, Xiao Chao in the moonlight. Yunshi stood on the beach, staring at the changing weather with a dumbfounded look. The distant sky was as dark as ink, portending that a tempest was coming. Wind drove clouds and swallowed the shining stars. Under the sky, it was the boundless sea. The waves roared and billowed upon the dark sea. At dusk, the sea should show the most beautiful scene. However, the coming storm ruined everything. Yunshi still remembered that the sea was so peaceful at daylight, but now, it exposed its violent side. At the ends of the sea, the tempest was moving at an incredible speed. Lightning spread through the sky again and again, illuminating the clouds like burned snakes. Puff! The winds were coming. Clank! The storm was coming. This was the first time that Yunshi faced a storm's earth-shaking powers personally. In the storm, the heaven and the earth were inked, as dark as the winter in hell. The only light was the flashing lightning in the clouds and the white lotus throne floating on the sea. The smell of the sea came from a distance and rose up through the air. The rain dropped on Yunshi's shoulders like it was raining cats and dogs, drenching his maid's black uniform. No! Xiao Chao! Yunshi shuddered. He was planning to swim across the sea, but now, he recovered himself in the face of the violent sea storm. To mortals, once they were drawn into a sea storm, they wouldn't survive. Xiao Chao wouldn't be an exception. Mayor! Yunshi summoned his star elf. How can I lock onto Xiao Chao's position? Yunshi anxiously looked at the small golden dog. His only hope now was the star's love system. Do you mean her seed? As Yunshi's system elf, Mayor could also see the thread between Yunshi and the girls. Yes. She is in danger. I must save her. Yunshi ground his teeth. Even if the storm was so horrible, he had no intention on giving up. He must save everyone. Don't worry, my master. Feel her seed by your heart. Mera jumped to Yunshi's shoulder and licked his ear. Her seed. Yunshi closed his eyes and felt the seed's direction in his heart. Was it his imagination? He felt that Xiao Chao's seed getting closer and closer. It's not an illusion. Look, she is coming. Yunshi felt then. He not only felt Xiao Chao's breath, but also including a strange creature's breath, which was much bigger and amazing. On the dark sea, a streak of white light beam was emitting lights and quickly moving towards Yunshi from the far-away heavy waves. As the white light beam moved, the waves were suppressed and the sea suddenly became peaceful. Even the inked sky was illuminated by its light. Yunshi could feel that the creature who was emitting the white light beam from its body was even strong enough to dispel the storm. Although it couldn't be compared to the white holy dragon, it was still a great being that was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Ha! A clear voice echoed between the heaven and the earth. The great being in the sea was dispelling the storm. The storm and winds already blotted out the sky and covered the sun, but now, they faded in the face of the loud, clear and song-like voice. The crescent moon shined its cold lights on the boundless waves, and a few sparse stars blinked in the dark blue sky. The sea breezes hummed, and the veil-like moonlight carried the soft night wind, dancing amongst the spoondrift on the dark sea. Between heaven and earth, the white light looked holy and tranquil, as if there was an invisible hand that was wiping off the storm. Yunshi gazed at the miraculous scene. He was really at a loss for words. Compared to the white holy dragon, this fantastic creature's power of suppressing the storm wasn't that incredible. However, its power was more natural, as if it was really a part of the cycle of natural processes. A few moments later, several black figures left the white light and swam to Yunshi. On the dark water, the several black figures met and parted, sank and swam, but always kept themselves in a loose formation. Yunshi could see curved knife-like dorsal fins on their black back. Every once in a while, they would spout out water from their forehead with buzzed sounds. Sometimes, one or two black figures would leap from the water, exposing their oval white spots in the air. Their streamlined bodies gave Yunshi an ineffable sense of power and speed. Discontinuously, they made song-like sounds that echoed in the night sky. They sounded like the voice which dispelled the storm. Whales. Yunshi looked at these big creatures and felt the growing of Xiao Chao's seed. He opened his eyes wide in surprise, because he had seen the girl, who was sitting on one of the killer whales without any clothes. Her healthy and slender body looked still like a child, and her freckled looked pretty innocent and pure. Under the moonlight, her skin looked strange but attractive. Yunshi could clearly see her slender legs, soft and arched feet and her slightly open toes. Her belly was smooth and compact, showing a kind of healthy beauty. Was she Xiao Chao? Was she really the girl in Yunshi's memory? Her body was so energetic, as if something in her body was suddenly released after the disaster. Her temperament had undergone drastic change. Not only her temperament. Her power had also changed. She was already at the 3rd rank now. What had happened to her while she was missing? Chapter 118. But what happened? Where had she changed? Yunshi checked Xiao Chao's seed, trying to find an answer. Soon afterwards, he found her changes. Xiao Chao's seed, mortal sword, perfect. The person who held this sword had practiced the mortal sword skill to the limit, due to that the person would be able to learn any high-level sword skills 2 times faster than ordinary people. Mind's eye, incomplete, a kind of insight learning from practice and exercise. It could help the owner analyze the environment and catch the tiniest opportunity to reverse the situation. Combat intuition, partly awakened. This ability could help the owner analyze the battle trend and respond to it in advance. At any time, the owner of this ability could use 100% strength. Persevering heart, the grass-like girl had a persevering heart. It could help her open the door to a higher rank. The Great Road, partly opened in the long river of fate. Some people were blessed by the goddess of fortune. Even if they were still mortals, they were fated to create legends. After reading the last information, Yunshi realized that he was witnessing a new legend's birth. She was going to step on her own great road. Xiao Chao was blessed by destiny itself. She had made the first move of her legend. Her natural posture and renewed temperament were the proofs of her rebirth. Yunshi still didn't know what had happened to her, but he could see her changes. May. Yunshi was lost in his thought, till Xiao Chao jumped off the black whale she rode, ran to him and called him. He finally returned to the real world. Ah, Xiao Chao. Welcome back. Yunshi hesitated. Sorry, I don't know what to do at a time like this. You can just smile, Xiao Chao answered. Sorry to keep you waiting. She deftly stood on her toes, then held Yunshi in her arms and kissed him. She put her small tongue into Yunshi's mouth and forcibly stirred. Oh. Under Xiao Chao's surprise attack, Yunshi unconsciously put out his tongue. After feeling that, Xiao Chao enthusiastically sucked his tongue. Yunshi heard Xiao Chao's breathing and groan, feeling that her body was so soft as if she didn't have bones. Xiao Chao's kiss was a little strange. After swallowing plenty of Yunshi's saliva, she tried to use her tongue to touch every corner of Yunshi's mouth. A large amount of sweet saliva flowed into Yunshi's mouth. Some of them flowed out from the corner of his mouth, hanging in the air like a silver wire. Finally, Yunshi struggled and put Xiao Chao away, for her kiss had almost made him suffocating. Who taught Xiao Chao such an erotic style of kissing? He was almost dried up. Looking at Xiao Chao, Yunshi couldn't believe that she had changed so much. In his memory, Xiao Chao was a girl who was clumsy in daily life and only focused on practicing her sword skill. Not enough, Xiao Chao seemingly didn't want to give up. Even Yunshi had pushed her away, she still launched the second offensive. Wow! Patter! Oh yeah! Oh yeah. Go. Go. Was it his illusion? Yunshi felt that there were other people. They were peeping at him and making inexplicable sounds. Xiao Chao seemed to be encouraged by someone. She opened her mouth again. However, Yunshi had covered his mouth with his hands. In that case, she could only put out her small tongue to help Yunshi clean the saliva on his neck. As her smooth, soft tongue licked and her warm lips brushed through, nothing was remaining on Yunshi's neck. As she licked, Yunshi's heart suddenly beat faster. His neck felt a sharp pain, because Xiao Chao was biting on his neck, for he refusing her kiss. My friends are saying that if you still resist, I can bite you, Xiao Chao said dangerous words with an innocent face as she gazed at Yunshi's eyes. Yunshi didn't know if it was his illusion, however, when Xiao Chao said that, a sense of love exposed on Xiao Chao's face, which made her look more pretty. Bite? How? Yunshi covered his neck with his hand, but didn't see any malice in Xiao Chao's eyes. Like this. Xiao Chao slightly opened her mouth. Her eyebrows raised, which looked so soft as if it was drawing the same soft curves in Yunshi's heart, making him feel itch. Stand on your toes, find the target, then bite on it. This was the perfect strategy Xiao Chao's friends were telling her. Yes, friends. Your best friends. The friends you want her to stay with forever. Yes, don't relax your bite. Yes, you must be active and enthusiastic. She is a pretty trustworthy friend. You should never let her go. For mating and love, you. Cough, for you friendship, you must be proactive. Ah. Oh, Xiao Chao didn't doubt her friend's words. She bit Yunshi's lips again and enjoyed the feeling. Xiao Chao, what was that bad friend? How could you teach my Xiao Chao so many wrongful knowledge? Xiao Chao, break it with that bad friend. The great road was still waiting for you. You shouldn't be slatternly. Yunshi felt his lower abdomen grow hot. One of his body part was going to raise its head. No. I can't expose my identity here. The apostle is still near. I can't remove my disguise now. However, I can't hold on any longer. For God's sake, Xiao Chao's healthy and flexible breasts were pressing my chest. They are a pair of all too powerful weapons. Woa. Patter. Patter. Paw 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 paw. Under the moonlight, they peeked at the black-haired girl's perplexed expression, translucent skin, soaked maid's black uniform, and puff. 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 A lot of blood spurted into the sea and dyed the water red. Chapter 119, Tropical Temptation. After another long, gentle, sweet kiss, Yunshi was finally freed from Xiao Chao's offensive attacks and escaped his fate of being drowned in kisses. No. I must stop her. If she continued, Yunshi doubted how long could he stop one of his body parts raising. He took advantage of his height, decisively holding Xiao Chao in his arms. Because Yunshi was a head taller than Xiao Chao, he could easily take her whole body in his arms, stopping her wild attack in this weird manner. Xiao Chao. You are wrong. We are friends, but you can't do this to your regular friends. Yunshi strenuously suppressed his desire and tried to persuade Xiao Chao at the same time. Regular friends can't do this. Then what kind of friends can do this? Xiao Chao asked with curiosity. Her tongue softly touched and slipped around Yunshi's neck, making him shiver as if he was getting an electric shock. Well, I have very few friends. Yunshi didn't know how to answer her question. He had tried this game with his childhood sweetheart many times, but none of them were as fervent as Xiao Chao. Xiao Chao's mysterious friend, what had you taught Xiao Chao? Puff. Puff. Whoa. 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 Yo-ho. Yo-ho. Yunshi heard strange sounds again. By the way, wasn't the temperature around him too warm? The storm was just dispelled and now it was really a sunny day. However, Yunshi felt hot as if he was in a tropical rainforest. Xiao Chao was hugged in his arms at this moment. She was like a colorful fish who was emitting bright lights, catching Yunshi's eyes tightly. Yunshi's hands touched Xiao Chao's skin. Her skin was so smooth and soft, not like a civilian at all. Yunshi remembered that her skin was rough due to her hard life and too much practice. What had exactly happened to Xiao Chao when she was missing? I also don't have too many friends. So, I'm glad to know that you are willing to be my friend, Mei. Xiao Chao said. Her voice was quiet and gentle, as warm as a strand of grass in the tropic sea. Why is Xiao Chao so cute? What is this feeling in my heart? Isn't the temperature around me too high? Puff. Puff. Paw 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 paw. Drip. Whoa. Drip. Again. What is the sound exactly? It didn't sound like the water or the waves slapping on the beach, but come from a more far-away place in the deeper water. Voila! The several whales leapt out of the water and passed by each others. The water they carried formed a big heart-shaped symbol in the air. My new friends are saying that I can't let the chance slip. Mei is my best friend. Xiao Chao said firmly. As a girl from a remote and poor village, she didn't have any teacher or legacy. She was like a strand of grass in the wild, practicing her sword skill all by herself. She valued her friends more than anyone. Especially Mei. After taking a strand of her magical black hair, her whole world was turned upside down. If Xiao Chao was like a strand of grass in the wild in the past, then Yunshi's seed was like a drop of sweet dew, making her vibrant with life. Xiao Chao appreciated Yunshi's seed so much. She didn't good at speaking, so she just kept her gratitude firmly in her heart. Friend is important. Mei is special. Therefore, I want to be her best friend. I want to stay with her forever. Ah. We are best friends. Yunshi could only accept her. After all, who could refuse such an innocent girl? Even if Xiao Chao didn't have his seed, she was still an attractive girl. Who would not want to have such a friend? Mei is my friend. Xiao Chao smiled. She didn't take further steps, because that was all her friends had taught her. Bang! 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 Puff! 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 One giant, gratitude balloon after another shot up from the sea. They exploded and sprayed in the air, reflecting different color. Deep purples and bright reds. Emerald green and dark blue. White gold and not pink. Various color and different shapes made the small beach look like an aquarium, full of dreamy atmosphere. Is that your friend? Finally, Yunshi persuaded Xiao Chao to put on the clothes which he temporarily made by using leaves. After that, he looked at a location in the sea. Yes. A very, very beautiful new friend. But she is a little big. Xiao Chao nodded. Then pointed at her own skin, which was obviously more smooth and delicate than past. She let me drink her milk. Delicious and good for health. Milk? Very big. Thoughts thronged Yunshi's mind. That contained abundant information. Ha! Hi! Puff! Puff! Giant water waves shot up from the sea. The mysterious creature who carried Xiao Chao to the island started to dive. After a while, the creature and the several whales disappeared in the horizon. Has she gone? What a pity. I want to let May drink her milk too. Xiao Chao waved her hands to them with a regrettable look. What is its race exactly? Yunshi gazed at the sea. In the end, he still didn't know what Xiao Chao's friend was. My friend has big breasts. She is the biggest. Very beautiful, very soft, and take care of me very much. Xiao Chao said with a natural look, although her ambiguous describe really made Yunshi feel confused. However, this was not a problem. Xiao Chao had come back. He saved all the 37 female swordsmen. No one was less. Yunshi held Xiao Chao's hands with a bright smile, walking on the way leading to their camping ground. Help! Help me! Whoa! Anybody here? Please help me. Suddenly and surprisedly, Yunshi heard a pitiful, cute and heart-touching voice. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.